Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of SkepTalk. And it is June 16th. And I have with me Eric, who's known by a nickname. What's your nickname?
Skeptics and Scoundrels. That is my nickname. At least,
all right. So
that's the name of my channel.
You just took a trip, didn't you? You were gone this last weekend?
I just spent a week in New York. I was there for work. I was for a convention called Dash. It's like a tech convention thing for a company called Datadog. So yeah, I spent there for about a week. So I'm still a little punchy from the time zone difference and travel and eating way too much food and drinking way too much. So I'm like in a haze. It's like a dream at this point. So I'm looking to maybe snap myself out of it with some nice cold splash to the face with some like theist colors and some maybe bogus weird claims. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it, waking up on the show with you.
Yeah, I was gone this last weekend too, and this trip was a little weird. It was I went to Des Moines, Iowa, which doesn't sound all that interesting, but the place that I was expecting, just the general vibe, I thought I was going to be put up in some cheap motel. You know, they're driving me out to the place. They say, "We hope you like the place we got for you to stay." I'm like, "Well, I'm not picky. It's all right," because I'm expecting that they're going to put me up in some place like that, and that we would end up doing the presentation in some, I don't know, rented venue like in a strip mall or something like that. But I get to this place where there's this big gate in the driveway, and I realize that there's no more suburbs. We're now on this guy's property, and it's the size of a golf course.
Yeah,
and there's golf cart trails, like a mile of golf cart trails around this guy's yard, and it's like, okay,
sounds awesome.
There's this mansion on this side, and then there's this other mansion on this side, and this is where I'm going to be. And they said I was going to be staying in the barn, and they said this before I saw the property, so I'm actually expecting it to be a barn, and technically it is, because it was originally built for, there's stables attached to it, and they built this massive building. These people that were huge fans of John Wayne wanted to make it a really Western, really rustic kind of thing. So there's like horse saddles everywhere. Everything's made out of wood, and it's actually kind of enormous and gorgeous at the same time.
I've seen some nice barns.
Yeah, this was extraordinary. And then they put me up in this room on the second floor, and I'm just like, this is nice. But then I want to bring up the more interesting thing was the guy who's hosting me on this takes me over to his house, and because they want me to see the dinosaur, and I don't know what I'm expecting to see in this guy's house. Go downstairs of his house, and he has a library that looks like Trinity College in Dublin. I mean, this is a library. I mean, like Beauty and the Beast library. Remember, he opens the doors. This is the library. You're like, damn. But then on the other side, there's like one room is a library. It's not a bookshelf. It's a library. Yeah. And then on the other side of the room is a paleo museum.
Wow. Like artifacts and
inside someone's
fossils.
House.
Wow.
He's got hundreds of fossils, including some big ones like a Dunkleosteus skull and a full mounted Stegosaurus in his house.
Good grief.
This is extraordinary. And anyway, I very much enjoyed my stay, and I only got to talk to the guy the first day I was there, so I didn't get to see him the next day. But I just wanted to let him know, and I'm going to do that this way, that I very much enjoyed the digs and the people that put me up and everything, and that was all good fun. So thanks, y'all.
That sounds awesome. Right.
Yeah. Super and jealous. So as I said on Monty Python, I came here for an argument. Let's see what we've got to that end. Okay. Let's see.
Morgan wants us to call out theists in the audience. Give us a call. Lines are open, and you got the number down below, 720-619-2288, or use a web link. And we want to talk to you. Get in there and let's have a conversation.
Yep, let's start off with, we got an atheist on the call. We only got one call, so we'll go ahead and take that. And this is Doric. Am I saying that right?
Hello.
Okay, thank you. All right, and so what is your question or topic?
Yeah, it's basically what's stated there. I have some difficulty comprehending how a theist might make the huge logical leap that the transcendental exists and there is a God in it. Like, it's just crazy to me. And I have to give the preamble that, like, I'm a professional philosopher, like academic philosopher. So I think a bit obsessively about these things, probably. But what I'm thinking is that, for example, take a guy like Spinoza, and he goes on this like whole thought journey, and at the end, okay, this doesn't make sense. The classic conception of the God in common religions, like the Judaism, God of the Jews, or like the Bible, or whatever. It doesn't make sense, but I'm living in the time I'm living in, and I can't be an atheist, so I don't know. The God is embedded in nature, but I cannot make the commitment that there's a transcendental because my immediate experience is just existence itself, and I cannot go outside of existence. So to make an assumption that there is the transcendental, and then to make the assumption that there is a God in it, is like just too many assumptions to make. And I have never seen a theist just provide the grounding for it. They just go, yeah, makes sense. God lives in the, I don't know, somewhere outside the universe, does not interact with the universe. You cannot find them within the universe. And like, okay, then, like, what am I supposed to do with it? And I know you have like a lot of experience interacting with theists, and like, how does this confidence come from that they can commit to such a concept without even like trying to ground like the transcendental itself, like, I don't know, some Platonic realm of ideas or any variation of the transcendental that you want to insert in it. Like, I'm a pretty strict monoist, so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you needed to call into an apologist show and ask them, because even when I believed in God, it was with the idea that other people must understand this better than I do, because shit don't make any sense to me. When I believed in God, he didn't make any sense to me. And so I was always asking my spiritual leaders to explain, and my spiritual leaders always failed. They couldn't come up with anything that was logically justifiable ever. And that was a problem. I've noticed that every logical fallacy has been used as an argument for God, and that every argument for God is a logical fallacy. Every kind of irrational thinking is involved in God belief. And this is even according to the people that are the most celebrated thinkers. Matter of fact, I'm getting ready to do a video on, I forget his name now, but you guys will see it next week. There's some apologist from Ireland who fancies himself, and other people celebrate him too, as being this great thinker, but everything he says is so damn
I know
dumb.
him.
You know him?
Yeah. I know who you're talking about. I can't remember his name.
Yeah. And how do these people celebrate all of this? Look at all of the top thinkers, the best minds of all Christian apologetics. I mean, would William Lane Craig be considered among the best? If you ask a Christian to tell you, who would they say? Very often I've heard William Lane Craig. So, of course, I've also heard Ken Ham and Kent Hovind too. It just depends on who you ask.
Like, what I'm wondering is that, like, how are like theists comfortable with things not making sense, and then like without having any grounding for their ontology, like their entire worldview that they base everything on, and this is the most important thing ever, and this explains the universe, my morality, whatever, my values, and then they are so confident about it, and like it's just concerning the lack of like thinking going on. Like, how does the thinking stop in that? Like, I have never been that deep into religion, never been religious, so I cannot really relate to that experience. But like, I'm wondering what that is.
Skeptics scientists are trained to think a particular way. They're trained that if you say something wrong, your own friends, all of us, all your allies are going to come down on you. We are going to pedantically nitpick everything you say. And we will agree and agree and agree until we can't, until you say something wrong, and then we're going to shut you down. We're going to stop you. We're going to correct you. And we're going to humiliate you if you say anything wrong. So everything you say, you have to be able to demonstrate how you got this information. Be ready to defend that point. Believers, entirely opposite, absolute opposite type of thinking. Say whatever the fuck you want. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you sound confident. Now, the scientific person, the skeptic mind person, says according to this source, according to this reference, or whatever, it seems to me, in my view, you have to be very. You can say that it was probably this if there's an indicated probability, and that's only when the evidence indicates that can you say this. But the theist say whatever the fuck they want, as long as they sound confident. It doesn't matter that absolutely everything they say is lies. It doesn't matter. Everything they say is bullshit. Not a bit of it can be shown to be true, just as long as they're confident.
Yeah, it's just too many commitments. I know there is a God. I know there is the transcendental, and I know what this God wants, and I actually know the God's name, and I actually know that this God wrote this book, and I actually know that this book is somehow like a connection to the transcendental. Like, it just sounds like a thesis project out of hell that is impossible to complete. Like, it gives me anxiety just thinking about all of the claims that need to be like grounded here. So
yeah, and Doric, I mean, like I can only speculate as to why a lot of theists do make this logical leap. They have an epistemology that is usually fairly sound for everything else in life except the things about the supernatural, or except the things about their particular belief. And it always is the belief, almost always is the belief, that they happen to be born into, which is regional to the part of the world that they were born into, that their friends and family were into. And I can only speak to myself as to why I made these logical leaps. And that's because I was born into it. I was taught from a very young age that the Bible is true, that I should trust my elders and my parents in the congregation. They know best. And I operated like I was not given the tool set needed, because like you're in here, you say you're a professional philosopher. You are bringing in very high. Yeah, you're bringing in very high level terminology. Like, I talked about epistemology. You're talking about ontology and the transcendental and how to ground things. And these were concepts that I was not even exposed to when I was young, or even into my 20s. I did not even know these words existed, let alone what they meant, because I was so isolated and kept from learning about these things because of my religion. So personally, that's why I was like that all the way up until my 20s, until finally I started realizing, hey, something's not quite right here, and I started, investigating. And that's 15 years ago now, and I'm still in that process of learning and going through all of those things. So that's just one reason that I can account for, because I myself went through it. But from conversations I've had with other theists, especially over the last 2 years, and a lot of other things that I've watched online, mainly call-in shows and conversations, there's an emotional component there. Usually people are less comfortable saying they don't know over saying, well, we have this reason, but we just got to take it on faith. They some cases will admit that, hey, we don't have a good reason to believe that this is true, but we have that faith, and it's more emotionally comforting than simply saying I don't know. Especially when you throw things in the mix there, like the carrot and stick of heaven and hell. The concept of the prospect of seeing your dead loved ones again, or seeing your enemies suffer forever, or people you don't like suffer forever. So there's all kinds of confounding factors in there. And that's kind of one of the things that I try to do when I'm talking to somebody who's like really entrenched in it and they don't really want to listen to logic or reason or really justify their position. I start to speculate and ponder, what is the emotional satisfaction they're getting out of this? And if you can teach a lot of people, hey, just let go of that emotion behind it, like let go of the need to live forever, or let go of the need to go to heaven, let go of the need to see your enemies suffer in hell, let go of needing to know, and get to a point of being comfortable, secure enough to say, hey, I don't know. I think that's a really good first step for a lot of these folks to start to critically and objectively analyze their beliefs, start to let go of these false beliefs and these irrational beliefs, and kind of start getting them to appreciate what you're bringing to the table, which is, hey, why are you making calls about the ontological, calls about what about the metaphysics and the supernatural with no evidence? And you can give me all these details about this with no evidence, and you expect me to believe it just because you believe it. So that's kind of where I've seen it, and that doesn't cover everybody. I mean, there's probably very secure and emotionally uninvolved Christians, but I'm not saying that at all. That's all of them. There's all kinds of reasons, and I can reflect on my own reasons that I had, and I can only speculate as to the reasons of others as I talk to them. But I think that's about kind of where it's at. It's just, and on top of that, we can get into the conversation about how religion and belief has served a very very important utility in the development of our species. And in the modern day and age, I think it's gone from a benefit, a survival trait, to more of a detriment and possibly an extinction trait if the wrong people get weapons of mass destruction and stuff that are religiously motivated. So that's kind of like a deeper conversation around that. But I think for the most part, if you want to talk to just a simple person, try to drill down into the needs and the insecurities that they're maybe harboring, and then why they're holding on to their religion. Because I can guarantee you, I'll finish up here in a second. I can guarantee you talk to any Jehovah's Witness, they need to see their dead loved ones again. They need to see justice put upon the evil people on mankind. They need to see the earth wiped clean by Armageddon and restored into a paradise. They need that. And that's a hard thing to get over because emotions trump logic in a practical sense in many cases for people. It shouldn't. We should value logic, but humans are like that. They tend to rely on emotion more than that rationality. So figuring out a way to navigate that and get cut through that and get to the heart of it, I think is probably a really good first step.
Predominantly religious culture has taught us that it is a virtue to have faith. But what is faith? Yeah. It is convincing yourself of what is not evidently true, which is the opposite of skepticism. And worse than that, it's being unreasonable. It's refusing to change your mind or admit that you're wrong. Those are not virtues. There's no part of faith that is a virtue. It's all vice.
Yeah, it makes sense. Also, like one thing that was said that was interesting to me, that like living forever, like pleasure exists because things are finite. Like imagine being forced to eat your favorite food forever without end.
It would drive you insane. Yeah, absolutely. I think something is valuable. I think something is precious because of how rare it is. I mean, just the most crude example, we don't find your common rock, to be precious, but when you find a lump of gold, that's precious. On a jewel, that's precious. You find a one-of-a-kind limited edition, collector's edition World of Warcraft set that I have up there, that's precious because it's so rare. But if something is super common, like the days you're going to live or the meals you're going to eat or your interactions with your family, if you have no fear and there's no, it's just endless, forever and forever and forever, then those moments go from precious to near valueless, because who cares about missing out on something, because I got tomorrow to do it. And it's going to be like that forever.
Yeah, people with persistent orgasm live in living hell. So,
those are real people. Yeah, that's actually a great example. There are people. There are some individuals, they have this has been a while since I watched the news article on this, but there are some people who have a condition where they will orgasm like 30, 40, 50 times a day uncontrollably. It just happens. And some of them are like, I just want this to stop. Like, it's ridiculous. I want this to stop. It's maddening. And, we may, those that don't suffer from that go, why are you complaining? But it's like, you live under that for 30, 40, 50 years of your life. And then you see what you think about it. Yeah. That's a great example. I need to get I'm looking at the technical term for that, the medical term, because you reminded me of that. So thanks.
Yeah, I was noticing
Orgasm Syndrome, I think.
What's that?
Persistent Orgasm Syndrome, or like there's one more that like you can get orgasms from like the slightest touch. It's a different thing. And
Yeah, I was noticing that in the poll that happened at the beginning of the show that no less than a dozen people identified as theists and said they would call in. So there's a dozen God believers supposedly watching the show right now who have not called in. And because there's no one waiting on the line, there's no one dialing in at this moment. Now, is it because I said that your very best thinkers are not good at thinking? Maybe I should pretend to be weaker than I am so that you guys wouldn't be so scared to call in.
Pseudo thinkers. But I did just, Dorek, I just look it up. It's called persistent genital arousal disorder, or PGAD. Yeah. So interesting stuff.
I tried listening to people. Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. I tried listening to people like William Lane Craig, and like they're like heavyweight intellectuals, and like I said, I'm a philosopher, and I go claim by claim, and like you're not saying anything. You're literally saying words that do not go anywhere or do anything, and just you're saying words. And like if you're not trained in this kind of thing, I think like it sounds all intellectual and serious and complex. But when you pull the veil off, like Wizard of Oz, like they go behind the scene, and there's this guy pretending to be a god.
Yeah. Are you familiar? Are you familiar with Pelagia's channel? Pelagia, he's a host on this show, and he has his own channel.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure if it was a very recent video. I think maybe it was. But one thing that him and Bart Ehrman and some others have kind of like shown, or at least like made me realize, because they like when you go to like a biblical scholar, like a trustworthy biblical scholar who's in it for the literature, in it for the history. They're not in it for the goal of supporting a faith, but rather to analyze the text objectively and draw conclusions from the evidence. When you talk to those individuals, at least the ones that I've seen on Pelagia's channel, they don't know anything about apologetics. They don't know who William Lane Craig is. They don't know who Frank Turek is. They don't know who Sean McDowell is.
Yeah.
Apologists tend to be very popular amongst apologists and amongst certain believers. I didn't know any of these guys when I was a Jehovah's Witness, but that's kind of a probably different story. But for the most part, they're popular amongst their own group, and they are very big fish in a very small pond, because the larger pond itself is the biblical scholarship, the actual biblical scholarship that's going on in the background with scholars and PhD holders that are just simply studying the text, writing their papers, getting them peer reviewed, not doing like this flashy, like, hey, look at me, I'm an apologist, let me talk to a class full of people, let me have a convention, let me have a YouTube channel. For the most part, like I said, these apologists tend to be very well known just really amongst their group, but in the grand scheme of things, they're very insignificant. So it's something I more I watch Pelagia's channel, the more I see him interview folks like Bart Ehrman, folks like Dale Allison, and others. The more it kind of is apparent that apologists really aren't all that big, at least in the grand scheme of things.
You would think not, but the problem that I have is, of course, that these type of fundamentalists are at every level of state and federal government, and they have faith advisors. We have people whose job is spiritual advisor when they don't know anything. They just make up whatever they want.
Yeah.
So can you imagine having a job where you just get to make up whatever you want and then say it, and you just get millions of dollars and you don't have to do anything?
Yeah.
And it's not like there's anybody who's better at it than you do. There's no way to show that anybody else is better at it than you are, because there's no way to show when either of you is wrong.
Yeah, that's my big thing is the lack of falsification criteria for religious claims. I love drilling into that whenever I talk to a theist and they have some claim. Usually comes down to, at first I'll go through like, okay, why do you think that? Faith, the Bible says so. I heard a story from a friend who was miraculously healed when he was prayed over. Stuff like that. You can go through all the street epistemology and all the Socratic method to drill down into that and show that these are not good reasons. And usually at the end of that conversation, I like to drop that saying, hey, falsification, do you know what that is? Do you think it's important? If you were wrong, do you think it's important to have a way to know you're wrong? And if the answer is yes to all that, I can ask them, if you were wrong about this God claim, how would you know? And I've never gotten a good answer because
when you ask them, they say, I won't change my mind.
That too. Yeah. Once they say I won't change my mind, like it's really hard because it's either, okay, do you value truth or do you value feeling good? Like, let's say you had a situation where the truth will make you very unhappy. Would you want to know the truth or would you rather remain in ignorance? And I've had people honestly tell me I would rather remain in ignorance. And I'm like, okay, well, you and I have a fundamental difference in values here because I like being happy. I want to be happy, but I don't value that over knowing the truth.
Yeah, that's a surprising thing that you got these admissions to. I mean, this is a number of people have admitted this to me over my life, that they're going to believe what they want to believe, even if they know it's not true, because it makes them happy. And I just can't understand that.
That goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about there's that emotional need, there's insecurity, and we're all humans. We all have emotions. We all have insecurities. Like, just because we're skeptics and atheists, folks in the audience, anybody's listening, doesn't mean we've transcended past these frivolous plebeian weaknesses. We're not saying that at all. We have emotions. We all have insecurities. The thing is, though, you need to get to the point where you can let go of certain things if reality does not bear those things out for you. I had to let go of living forever. I had to let go of seeing lost loved ones again. And it's okay. It sucks at first. It's all that. But once you get past that, you gain this intellectual agility in the way you handle the world and the way you handle evidence and the way you handle information. You're no longer bound to dogma. You're no longer bound to, well, I got to interpret it this way or else, it's going to threaten these beliefs that I really value and I need to be true. Once you can get rid of all that and let's cut through that and get the person to really, say, okay, I need to set aside these emotions and just really use my brain, my logical part of my brain, rather.
I have to interject. We
potentially
now
make
have
some progress. Yeah.
We now have a theist waiting in the queue.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. And they got an interesting question too. So, Dorek, do you mind if we go ahead and take this call from the theist?
Can I just, before that? Sorry.
Make it quick, sure.
Yeah, I don't mind. Just like real quick, like one other thing is that like I sometimes go up and like splash in the apologist pond and like they act like I am the asshole and I'm just like asking questions. And one thing I noticed that, especially with JWs, that I usually know their Bible better than they do, and it's not literally lifetime that for me. And like, how is that possible?
I've been there for a while now. Yeah, on the evolution versus creationism thing. Everybody that tries to wrestle with me on that, they always hit me with the beginner level stuff, and it is frustrating that I always seem to know both sides of this argument better than they know their own alone.
Yeah.
And they never know if they know anything about their own side, they don't know anything about mine. That's frustrating. So all I get for their description of my position is always a straw man.
Yeah.
I'd say philosophy 101 is a life skills class that should be mandatory. Anyway, I'll shut up now, take the tears, and enjoy the show.
All right, Dorek. Thank you so much for the chat. That was fun.
Yeah. Have a nice day. Bye.
Yep.
Good night. All right, so we are going to talk with Hampton.
There you go. Okay.
Yep, we're going to talk to Hampton in Virginia.
I didn't think I'd be on this quickly. Okay. Okay, so to start, I'm not going to debate any of the biology. I'm not going to debate any of the other stuff. That's all right. To give you some background on me, I was raised a Black Southern Baptist. So my biases sort of lay in that area. However, I don't believe in any sort of Abrahamic God.
Okay.
If you want to know exactly what my belief system is, I first started off like really evangelical Christian. eventually, by the time I was like, I'm also like Generation Z, by the way. So the fact that I had access to the internet by the time like 2010, 2011, I like very quickly started realizing that reality didn't like comport to evangelical Christianity. So by the time I was about 16, I basically was an atheist. And however, by the time I started studying mathematics and physics around 2019, my hardline atheist space started to change. And the reason why is I became aware of the more recent advancements within mathematics.
You became aware of what, sir?
The most recent advancements within mathematics and their implications on philosophy, metaphysics. Are you familiar at all with okay, this is going to be a really weird sounding term of jargon, all right? I'm just going to prep you with this. Modal homotopy type theory.
Never heard of it.
Okay, so I'm going to have to really move back, all right?
Let me name it one more time. You said modal homotopy. What?
Type theory.
Type theory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So modal as in like being, like what does it mean to exist? Homotopy meaning a space, a topological space, and type meaning hey, this is a certain form of information that is able to be processed by a computer.
Okay.
So the reason why this is interesting is mathematicians during like the 60s and 70s were constructing this theory, and they ended up realizing that this is the formalization of Hegel's logic, specifically his science of logic. This might sound like a really weird claim, but Hegel was just correct. He didn't have the mathematical language for it at the time, but his whole system of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, we've actually managed to formalize in what's known as part of a separate but related area of math known as topos theory, where we can essentially say, oh, hey, you have this type, it has some opposing type, you can take the union of those two types, and then you get this thing that's called a topos. And that new object, you can actually construct a fully consistent theory of mathematics. And you might be wondering, where am I going with all of this? Well, the implication is that there is no way to determine whether or not the reality you're living in is a simulation, because the language of modal homotopy type theory essentially says
let's
that.
Stop there. Let's stop there. You've lost all your credit. You've lost all your credit as a philosopher and everything else.
Well, no. Please.
No. Yeah. Okay, so
I don't believe in simulation.
So what's a simulation?
I don't believe in simulation.
What is a simulation?
I do not believe in simulation. Let me start off with that.
You do not believe in a simulation.
I do not.
Okay, so you don't think. So you know that there is a way to distinguish the simulation from the real thing.
No. This is what I'm trying to explain to you.
So if we are in a simulation, if we are in a simulation, then that would imply that there is a real thing, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. No, sir, please.
Okay, so it's not
explain further.
It's not a simulation because it is the real thing.
No, okay, sir, you're jumping the gun. You got to let me explain what the mathematics says. Okay. So, we're like Bertrand Russell and what's Gödel, where they failed in trying to construct a consistent theory of mathematics, is that they assumed that the basic object of the set was the only type of object you could construct. But like 30 years after him, some other guys came along and they came up with stuff called category theory, and they realized that set theory was essentially like a very tiny portion of what was category theory. The equivalent, the analogy I like to make is that Gödel and the rest of them tried to do chemistry assuming there was only hydrogen. So once we were able to identify the full periodic table of logical structures that appear, other mathematicians started making statements with these structures, and they were able to basically demonstrate that there were these structures that were appearing across math, across physics, across computer science, across really anything that can be understood in terms of structure, which which I know sounds vague, but I'd have to elaborate on that later. But the point is that the point isn't that everything is a simulation. Rather, since reality is a process and simulation is a process, those things are according to the definitions of homotopy equivalent. So which is why I phrased my question the way that I did. I personally think you can't go as far as atheism. I think if you want to be fully reasonable within the tools of like mathematics and metaphysics provided to us, you can only go as far as agnostic.
So, Hampton, what's your definition of atheism and agnosticism? Because I got a feeling we got differing definitions here.
Yep.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand properly. Atheism is the claim that there is not a God, right?
Wrong.
So that's okay, the philosophical. Hold on, Hampton.
That's not even
Hampton.
the philosophical definition. That was the never definition, except proposed by some Christian philosopher. But that was never the definition that any atheists, or that there might be some whackdoodle out there who called themselves that for that reason. But no, by and large, the consistent, original, still current definition is and always was the lack of belief in a God. The question is, do you believe there is a God, right? Does the subject have a belief in a God? If the answer is yes, then they are a theist. If the answer is no, then they are atheist. Period.
So then where would an agnostic place in that?
Atheism. So Hampton, atheism has multiple meanings. Okay, so you can in certain philosophical circles. Now, whether it's valid or not, Aron, I mean, we can talk about that. But in certain philosophical circles, atheism is the positive claim that there are no gods. Hampton, that is not the definition we use on this show, and that's not the definition that a vast majority of the atheist community uses. So
it would be let's concentrate on the fact that it is the vast majority and not 14 philosophers in the last century.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So
sure.
Yeah, so if we absolutely want to operate under a definition of atheism being what you stated it was, then no, regard to most gods, then Aron and I are not atheists, but we've changed the definition from what we typically use. Basically, in a nutshell, theism references what you believe, Gnosticism references what you know, and that's not a strict exclusive or proposition there. I can you came in and you're labeled here as an agnostic theist, and I would say that I'm an agnostic atheist because I have a belief and I have a knowledge, and my different claims about my belief or my knowledge will change those labels according to the definitions that we typically use.
And I was an agnostic atheist for many years.
Yeah. So we could have a long 3-hour conversation about the modal homotopy type theory, and we can get all on the same page about it. We can go, okay, we're going to adopt this label about atheism being the positive claim, and Aron and I would agree, yeah, okay, in that case we're not atheists, but we have to be called something else because under the definitions that we were operating.
Yeah, and there are strong atheists and there are weak atheists.
Yeah.
So I was in the agnostic atheist camp for a long time. That would be the weak atheist camp. Now I'm in the strong atheist camp. Still atheist.
Yeah. What I'm saying is under these, if we were to operate under these strict definitions and basically play the game that Hampton's putting out for us, then we would let go of the atheist label. And then, I guess it depends on the God we're referencing. And Aron, you may still be an atheist under that label. But anyway, my point being, Hampton, is that we're kind of getting away from what normal people talk about, not to push you down or anything, but we're getting away from the normal conversations we have and with people that either believe or don't believe, and how much they know about those beliefs and such. We can
you posted a comment
that, but we don't want. Yeah,
you posted a question in the queue when you were calling in, and I thought that was an interesting question. Would there ever be a way to verify a God? And I would like to. Did you want to talk about that question?
Yeah. That's why I brought up what I wanted to bring up, because I found it. I find it's something I'm legitimately troubled with. When I because I was in your camp for a while. Strong. What was the term that you used? I'm so sorry.
You were in my camp, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah. What was the name you used for it?
Strong atheist.
It was Yeah, a strong atheist.
Yeah.
I did not believe in a God. Yeah.
Okay, but not only did I did not believe in a God for a long time, and then at some point I also developed a belief that there is no God, in addition to not believing in a God. So I was already atheist because I don't believe in a God. I'm still atheist when I also believe there is no God, just a different subcategory of that. Now, on the question that you posed,
I'm sorry.
On the question that you posed, would there ever be a way to verify a God? Would you like to talk about that question?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. I'm sorry if I'm making that difficult. The reason why I wanted to use the framework that I did was because, I mean, a mathematical framework I feel like would be the best way to approach that. This is something we can logically set up and verify. So I personally don't think you could. And I guess when I was getting screened, I should have been a little bit more careful with my wording because I need to put more emphasis on the agnostic end of things versus like the theist end of things. I guess I could best put it like I operate as if I don't think there is a God, but I still.
Let's imagine for a moment that there is a God.
Yeah.
Would you be able to verify it then?
No, I don't think so.
I think you could.
How?
Anything that a God does to affect changes in this reality, the way that I've described this is that any time that God reaches his arm into the prime material plane to affect some physical change, he would pull his arm out dripping with physics.
Okay,
if
right?
miracles are happening, it wouldn't just be that a thing happened that we don't know how to explain it. It would be that a thing happened and that it was definitely the supernatural or magical that did it. There would be some reliable way
you're saying
to demonstrate it. I've often said that if magic was real, and that's what we're talking about right now, if magic was real, then there would be people like Hermione, Gandalf, Spock, or Obi-Wan who could demonstrate that reliably. But nobody ever demonstrated anything except how to lie.
Right, yeah, but at that point, does that become magic, or does that just become like another aspect of our universe that exists that is repeatable and like
can you show that there is fuck all supernatural anything?
No, I don't believe that you can.
If it was real, you would be able to.
Okay, but this is the reason why I brought up the structure that I did before. I was listening to what you were talking about earlier with the other guy about how a lot of theists have to make that huge leap of faith and or like they aren't willing, like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, And give me a second to process my thoughts with this. Basically, my claim is that knowing what we know now about systems and processes and the developing general science of those systems and processes, we now know that there is an equivalence between what we would call reality and any other process that we might term simulation. And therefore, any test to try to determine one from the other doesn't exist. Because
the simulation idea, again, I feel like we've already said this, implies that there is something being simulated, right?
No, again, what I'm trying to say is that, okay, I'm probably not explaining the
I have to warn you that when I was a child, the first time I heard this argument, I thought it was the stupidest argument I have ever heard. That was when I was 12.
Let me make this clear.
Well, hold on.
We are in a simulation.
Right. That was 50 years ago. I still think it's the stupidest argument I've ever heard.
Okay, but
the idea that reality is a simulation is still just as bad as it was 50 years ago.
No,
here's a way to demonstrate that. I'm sorry, what?
sir, y'all aren't letting me. I think y'all are putting words in my mouth. Something I'm trying to say. I do not believe there is a simulation. What I'm trying to say is that
why did you bring it up?
Well, no, because I was trying to specifically say that people have this whole misconception about simulations and reality when really you don't need to worry in the first place. Because when people operate off definitions of equation and equivalent, you start to I'd have to go over like so much math, but essentially people are worrying about the wrong thing. That's what I'm trying to say.
So Hampton, we can kind of...
All you need to worry about is the reality, that perceived reality, whatever you want to call about. Ultimately, I agree with you. All you need to care about is what you're in.
Okay,
Hampton,
let's think about this for a moment. I mean, do you know how your vision works, how your ears work, how olfactory regions, your nose works? You know any of that?
Yes, I am. Like I've had an introduction. Yes, I'm not going to claim to be biologist. Yeah.
Okay, so your eyes are seeing photons
you're
reflected.
Receiving certain optical electromagnetic. Sorry, you're receiving electromagnetic radiation.
Your ears are picking up vibrations in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Your nose is picking up atoms. All of this requires that atoms exist and that photons exist. And so if it was a simulation and you're using this as an argument for God, then your God designed where he could have just as easily created a reality in which atoms do
you haven't
exist.
even let me gotten to the end of what I was saying. I wasn't
Hold on a
going to argue for
Instead, wait, because there's thousands of idiots out there who think this is a good argument. Let me address that, even if it's not your position. Your God,
you're right.
God you're arguing for, could either have created a real reality in which there is an atmosphere for vibrations to travel in which there are atoms that your nose can detect, and they do have energy levels that produce photons, and so your eyes can see that sort of thing. There's either a God that created all of that in reality, or you have a God that created a simulation just because he's a liar and wants to give a false impression.
Right?
Okay. Nonsense.
I was trying to establish the fact that the mathematics shows that your ultimate argument makes sense. People shouldn't worry.
Okay.
It's the same thing regardless. You're breathing air.
Are you? How do you know anything is real? Stupid argument.
Don't worry about it. That's
Hampton, maybe we can kind of let's kind of maybe like get out of the weeds a little bit and get kind of back to the basics here. I have a feeling that we might be speaking two separate languages here. We may be in violent agreement on a few things here. All right, we may be in violent agreement on a few things here, but the simple, short, and sweet answer to your question: would there ever be a way to verify a God? Is I don't know. Like when you say verify, it depends on what you mean. Confirm, prove, whether through a mathematical sense or not. I don't know. What I do know is that I can eliminate certain types of gods using the logic system that is a part of my worldview and such. And that if you establish a God has a contradiction in its definition, or that God also contradicts something else about reality, then one of those things has to go. And since I know reality is here, the God's going to go. So in a sense, there is a way to verify there is not a God, depending on the definition of the God. Is there a way to verify? Is there a way to verify that a God does exist? Well, if we can't just argue and logic it into existence. We need actual evidence to back up the claims that will go into our logical syllogisms. And that evidence comes from testing, demonstrability, repeatability, measuring, all that kind of stuff. So either a God exists. Let's just say for a moment that a God does indeed exist. Either that God exists with our interacts with our reality, or it doesn't. If it doesn't interact with our reality, then it exists, but effectively to us, it does not exist. And while we may be factually wrong to say, this God does not exist, we are justified in that because we have no way to even begin to reveal this God, the existence of this God. It is pure speculation, and that God is within the ranks of all other mythical beings that you can think of there.
Go
Yeah, and then the second one is that the God actually does interact with our reality, and now we can get into the realm of testing, and we can not worry about what type of logical system we're using there, what type of a type theory we're using, but we can actually like start to investigate, and we can use that method to find it.
That's not true, because type theory was invented to make computers like exist. Like, in order for you to measure, okay, this is just according to my like physics background, okay? If you want to measure something, you need to have a model, right? And you need to associate that model with a computer. And with that computer, you have to be able to like actually have like repeatable, measurable like data, right? So the reason why I posed the question why I did was because I really think what was the term that you right, faith. People really don't. Damn, I'm so sorry. I think I lost my train of thought.
Then the other problem is since we've defined what atheism is, we also have to define what a god is, and every god that was ever worshipped was always a magical, anthropomorphic, immortal, including the one in the Bible. So are we arguing for a god, or are we arguing for something entirely different that you just want to call God, for lack of a better word?
Right. Yeah, and because in all my experiences, I've never had the supernatural. I've everything I could explain could be fully explained through reason, observation, empiricism. Right? But then I go through my whole life getting to that, and then I get to the higher levels of mathematics, and then here are these guys, completely deconstructing what I thought was baseline reality.
How did anybody deconstruct anything that you thought about there not being? The only way to do this, the only way to deconstruct atheism is to show evidence of a God. You yourself said there's no way to verify a God. How did they even challenge your position then?
Hold on. Well, one, like, what? I'm sorry if I'm causing any frustration. I don't mean to cause that. Okay. Like second, it's kind of like this. Like, earlier you said like atoms exist, right? The current model that we use to understand atoms presumes that particles are points, right? They're zero dimensional, right?
What?
Oh, okay. So you're not familiar with that?
No, I'm not a physicist.
I probably need to do.
I'm not a physicist either.
My degree is in anthropology.
I'm so sorry. Let me explain that. Okay, so people give physics a lot more credit than like what in terms of like the problems that it solved. There's really only like a handful of problems that we've really like solved fully, and then the rest we basically have to use what's the specific term?
I just want to let you know that we now have two theists in the queue, and they both have interesting questions. I'm hoping that in the next minute, your comment, your situation becomes interesting enough to keep them on hold.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So you got our answer, Hampton. You got our answer. We don't know if there'll ever be a way to verify a God. I showed you a few ways that we could.
My answer is yes. If there was one, we could.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate y'all taking your time. I didn't mean to cause any frustration. Sorry about that.
You're good.
No worries.
Catch you later.
I really enjoy your program. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Good night. And I'm going to pick up on the next one. We didn't do well, maybe let me go ahead and talk about the things that are upcoming, because I do need to cover those. I should have done like after the first call. So let's see if I can read this. Where are we at in this? Oh, yeah. So tomorrow we have, let me blow that up. There we go. Tomorrow we have Chewed Gum with Elisa Lube and Aron. Then on Thursday we have Wednesday we have The Hang Up at 6 p.m. with Jimmy Snow and Elisa Lube. Then on Thursday we have the Transatlantic Call-In Show with Josie Caballero. Yeah, that's Josie Caballero and Luxander. I don't have anything showing on our calendar for the 20th or the 21st, but then on 22nd, on Sunday, we have the Sunday Show with Austin Archer and Jimmy Snow. Then on Monday, we have SkepTalk with Aron Adair and Susan Gerber. Then again on Tuesday, we have Chewed Gum with Elisa Lube and Erica Gibbon. And then on next Wednesday, we have the Hang Up Again with Matt Dillahunty, and the Transatlantic Call-In Show on the following Thursday with Josie Caballero and Ben. There. Now I've gotten that out of the way, and now I can go ahead and pick up one of these. What?
Also, you missed one on the 22nd, Sunday show After Dark at 7 p.m. Central Time. That will be me. Yeah, no worries. That would be, I'm only mentioning because I'm on there. So it's me and Owen Morgan. So we're going to have another ex-Jehovah's Witness team up there. So that's going to be a really fun one, I think. I
enjoy Owen Morgan. So that you and him, that'll be a good show. All right, so I'm going to pick this one up. This is Amir. He is in the UK. All right, Amir, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys just fine. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely, yes. So we have a question or the comment, the topic that you wanted to discuss. I'm going to read this out. It says, preventing a variation of the contingency argument that adds credence to the existence of God. And if that's the case, then why hasn't anybody ever used a variance of the contingency argument that would work to that end before now?
I mean, I think, with such a nuanced topic, there's always going to be new theories, new ideas, and new ways of being able to think about God's existence that, over time we'll see this entire debate just evolving. The argument that I do want to present has also been, by my own admission, been refined using artificial intelligence in ways that I think has really advanced from previous iterations of the argument, and I will be using my own lines of defenses to come up with any rebuttals against any attacks that you guys might have against the argument. But I look forward to presenting it.
Well, let's hear the argument then.
Absolutely. I mean, just in the first instance, just before we build up to that, I just want to define certain terms. So, atheism, we can all agree, is just fundamentally involves a rejection of the claim that a god or any gods exist. And for the purpose of this debate,
why would we agree on the thing we just argued against for 20 minutes?
Sorry?
Why would we suddenly agree on the thing that Eric and I just argued against for 20 minutes?
What
saying that that's not our position.
Amir, you may want to repeat what you just said there. I think maybe we misheard it. Try one more time.
So atheism fundamentally involves a rejection of the claim that God exists.
It's a rejection of belief in the claim.
Of the belief in the claim. Okay. I'm happy to make that correction. So for the purpose of this debate, I'm going to coin a new term. I'm going to call it, let's say, an a-naturalist, which fundamentally involves a rejection of the claim that a naturalistic explanation is sufficient to explain why anything at all exists.
Meaning that you would have to resort at some point to magic.
No, it doesn't mean that at all. I think that's
okay. Well, what's the alternative then? If it's not natural, the only option was supernatural. You're saying you're not going for the supernatural, but yet you're holding for a god. So,
I mean, I'm going to pause you there, Aron. Sorry, do you see? Just for the sake of the debate, I'm just calling a new term called an a-naturalist. Whether or not there are any other alternatives is irrelevant at this point. I just want to ask you both
you said that natural explanations were insufficient, meaning that you would have to close that gap with magic. You'd have to go to the supernatural, right?
As I see it, correct. There's only two options that we do have: a naturalistic explanation as to why anything could still exist, or something that transcends naturalism, which we can call it supernaturalism.
Magic.
I wouldn't call it magic. No, I think you see the problem with calling it.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah,
you know what a blessing is? Your book. Well, let's say the Bible and the Quran both support blessings and curses. Do you know what blessings and curses are?
Absolutely. I mean, I just need to clarify.
They're
I'm not
magical
religious, but I
enchantments.
do believe in God.
One of them is a positive enchantment, that good things will happen, and the other one is a negative enchantment, that bad things will happen. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, magical enchantments. The supernatural equals the magical. You don't believe in magic, but you believe in the supernatural, which means you believe in magic.
I disagree. I mean, supernatural doesn't mean
I know.
magic or irrational.
You're welcome to be wrong. Go ahead and call it something else because you don't want to call it what it is, but that's fine. Don't call it what it is. Call it whatever, the non-natural, immaterial, metaphysical mind. Call it that. If you need 7 words to replace the word magic, fine. Use those.
Sure. I see this.
And Amir, maybe just a little nitpick. I was doing some Googling while Aron was talking. So you're coining this term a-naturalist, and you're saying that is a rejection, that a naturalistic explanation is sufficient to explain what we see. There is already a term called supernaturalism that seems to cover that. Are you aware of that term? And if yes, why are you avoiding it?
The term supernatural is, sorry, what, could you repeat that last part?
Sure. The supernaturalism is the opposite of naturalism. Supernaturalism is a belief in the spiritual. So now I understand the spiritual has kind of some loaded language there, and Aron calls it, rightfully so, I think, magic, because we're talking about things that cannot be demonstrated, that we have not seen. So are you trying to avoid any type of like loaded language like that, and just simply saying, okay, well, let's just kind of like water down the language to not natural?
Well, what I'm actually trying to do, it's a good point. I'm just trying to reduce it down to an equal playing field, because if atheists reject that there is a supernatural explanation as to why anything at all exists, are they also rejecting that there is a natural explanation as to why anything at all exists? Or I
would actually stop you right there, because atheists just reject a God. Atheists don't necessarily reject a supernatural. It's not logically impossible that a supernatural exists and yet no gods still exist. So
100%. You can say that with absolute utility. That's true. But for what I'm trying to identify is, as I'm debating you both, irrespective of the wider atheist community, are you both committed to the fact that a-naturalism is just as likely as atheism, as in both of these footings are equally as unlikely?
No, I've met very few people who reject reality entirely. I've met very few people who just reject all of reality in total. It takes a special kind of person to reject reality. To pretend as if everything is a dream or an illusion, it takes quite a detachment from reality. There's not many people that can do it. Most people will accept some natural explanations, but then when it gets to the point where it's beyond their, let's say if they got out of school in 7th grade, well, then they're probably going to be creationists because they didn't understand any of the classes that they didn't take after that. So they wouldn't be able to understand evolution.
And I wouldn't...
it's not about...
Sorry, Amir, go ahead. No, Amir, go ahead and respond to that. Go ahead.
I was just going to make the point. It's not about denying that reality exists. I think we can say, for the most part, unanimously, that
your definition of a-naturalism literally, by definition, denies reality.
No, it doesn't deny reality. It's denying that the origins of reality are due to naturalistic causes, not that reality.
So you accept that there are natural explanations that are sufficient to explain many things in the natural world.
Correct, but I don't think that ultimately explains the root cause of why anything at all exists.
Okay, so what is the problem with the explanation for why anything at all exists? How about the idea that many physicists propose right now is that it's not possible for there to ever have been just nothing?
I've got 2 points to that. The first one is, in the previous debate, you mentioned to the caller that you are not a physicist. So when you are now referring to physicists in this debate, that is a leap of faith.
Yeah, I did refer to physicists. I didn't declare myself a physicist.
Sure, but so then what is the relevance? Why are you...
What's the relevance of what experts in their field say? If I tell you what's wrong with my teeth, I'm not going to tell you from my own opinion. I'm going to tell you what my dentist said.
Sure, but I think the scientific community unanimously would agree that we are not equipped to address the root causes of why anything at all exists within an empirical framework.
But let's get back to the idea that physicists generally hold that the first law of thermodynamics, which is quite popular in science, is consistent. They hold that material energy cannot be created or destroyed. Therefore, it wasn't. So what's the problem?
It cannot be created or destroyed. I don't understand the relevance of this argument. Could you continue?
Right, I don't understand the relevance of your argument. Exactly. So you're holding that the first law of thermodynamics is void?
No, not at all. I mean, the first law of thermodynamics is established. Energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Okay, well, then let's put this in a different category then. Because when I get into arguments with theists, I find increasingly they don't want to talk about anything that I know about. Maybe because they know that I know about it. They only want to talk about things that I have no expertise in. They always want to go back beyond. And so they say that the scientific explanation is insufficient to explain. Well, there's a point where the science is completely sufficient on its own to explain. And this is the part where the Quran and the Bible both collapse into houses of burning cards.
Okay.
So if all we can talk about is why there is something rather than nothing, well, there was always something. There was never just nothing. So that's settled. So natural explanations like evolution completely explain the origin of our species and the development of our humanity. There's no insufficiency to explain that. So where does your God come in?
So are you therefore positing that the universe has always been eternal? If there was always something,
it doesn't matter. As I said, my degree is in anthropology, both physical and cultural. So I study comparative religions on the cultural side. I study evolution on the physical side. Natural explanations totally cover everything with full sufficiency from way beyond the beginning of humans. So there's no deficiency there. The only deficiency might be that you go all the way back to what you think is the very beginning of an eternity, and there is no beginning of an eternity, where you say, well, how come there's something rather than nothing when there can't be nothing? And when the laws of physics imply that there was never a point when there was nothing, when at the very closest you could get is that there's a singularity that pre-exists time, which is not nothing, and that was possibly a remnant of a prior form of a universe. At no point ever, never do you get support for the God of the Bible or Quran. Never happens.
Can I try to steelman your argument first, just before I respond? Because there's a lot to unpack there. You say you're putting your kind of worldview around the origins of the universe, if at all there was an origin, on what the general scientific community says.
Yeah, there was no origin of the universe.
Of which you do not have to be a scientist yourself to unpack exactly what scientists are saying on the matter. You are going and deferring to their expertise, which, by their consensus, they are saying that we don't have to appeal to something supernatural. Is that roughly on?
Let me clarify a little bit. It would not matter if the universe had a beginning. There still is no point ever, never, where material science in any point beyond, if there was a beginning of the universe, from that point on till now, there's no insufficiency, such as would be required by your argument. So where is the insufficiency after that? Let's pretend for a moment the universe had a beginning. From that point on, where is science insufficient? Where do you need to act for magic instead?
You say if we grant that the universe had a beginning, you're asking what exactly?
Yeah, let's pretend the universe had a beginning, and then where does your God come in?
if the universe had a beginning, then we have to ask what, and the terminology here, you have to be very specific, because to ask something like what came before the beginning is almost nonsensical. So I think there's terms like stance creation and stuff like this.
Okay, let's imagine then that a fourth dimensional universe has a rift in the time-space continuum and floods into a three-dimensional universe. So that just like if you were trying to do an MRI scan of your body, but it only shows up in two dimensions, and the scan goes all along your body, it starts at your head and ends at your feet, somehow your head seemingly appears out of nothing. It didn't literally appear out of nothing, but on the scanner it would look like it did. And then it scans all of your body, always looking at two dimensions, all the way through. It's cutaway views until it gets to your feet, and then your feet appear to disappear into nothing. Not literally into nothing, but it would look like it disappeared into nothing. So we have a fourth spatial dimensions plus time. Mm-hmm. They enter a three-dimensional universe. They give the illusion of reality appearing out of nothing, and then eventually disappearing into nothing. When, after this creative event, whenever after that, is science, natural science, which is the only science, insufficient to explain any of our origins, like origin of species, origins of humanity, origins of religion, and people making up gods? Where does that come in?
I mean, just to that point, I'm completely open-minded to the fact that there are scientific explanations that can explain why the Big Bang happened and what came before the Big Bang. I'm completely open-minded to that.
But that's not what we're talking about now, is it? I said, let's assume that the universe had a beginning and that the Big Bang was a beginning, because the Big Bang was not the beginning of the universe. The Big Bang was the beginning of cosmic inflation, not of the universe itself. But let's pretend, for this argument, that the universe had a beginning, and that after that, and that it happened by the means that I just described, for example, or according to string theorists, it was a collision of two cosmic brains, BRANES. Any of those, doesn't really matter, or a multiverse that spawns universes like popping out of existence, like watching bubbles come to a boil in a saucepan. Let's say one of those things happens. After that, where is the point after the Big Bang? If we assume that the Big Bang happened by any means, whatever, after that, where does science become insufficient to explain fuck all?
Science doesn't become insufficient. I think it can adequately explain everything that happens after the Big Bang. But
so science explains everything.
Science explains everything. The other way. We're trying to go the other way, though. No, it explains everything that happened after the Big Bang, but it doesn't explain what happened before the Big Bang. Now, the thing is that there can be
only argument is that you reject a material explanation for the multiverse producing multiple universes, for the fourth spatial dimension inflating three-dimensional space, for the collision of cosmic brains, all of which could cause a beginning of the universe and a collapsing prior form of the universe, which would result in a singularity that then re-expands, where the arrow of what is it? The arrow of
arrow of time, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah. So after that, so you don't know how everything started. Given four material causes for everything to start, if everything started. And so after that, where, if ever, does natural science, ever become insufficient to explain anything?
I think the problem in all of this, just if I can explain it from my point of view, is that, like I said, I'm open-minded to the fact that there could be explanations to the origins of this universe. But what I'm trying to do is look at it from the other end.
Is there a point? Is there any point after that where science becomes insufficient?
No, I've already clarified that.
Okay, so what you've got is given 5 examples for a material explanation for the beginning of the universe, a universe that didn't have a beginning, but we're only going to say that it had a beginning for the sake of the argument. We'll say that it had a beginning. We've got 5 material explanations for it, none of which imply a God, and you're saying that you don't have any instance you can cite where material science fails and we have to turn to magic.
Aron, I think you've reduced this down to just viable explanations as to the origins of this universe and the Big Bang. You see,
funny.
Irrespective of...
You're saying that science has... If you're saying that natural explanations are insufficient...
Can I finish my point, please?
Hold on. If you're saying that natural explanations are insufficient, then you have defined it that way. I'm staying in the field you set up.
Can I please finish my point? Like I said, I am completely open-minded to the fact that there are naturalistic explanations as to why this universe exists and why the Big Bang has happened. However, all of those explanations still require an explanation themselves. The multiverse requires an explanation. The reason as to why strings exist in string theory require an explanation. Otherwise, just let me finish my point, Aron. I'll let you speak the whole time without interruption.
Make another 3 or 4 failed points that are all wrong, and we'll keep saying no, it doesn't, until you get to a valid one, and then I'll stop saying no, it doesn't.
Because all of these explanations, they require an explanation themselves. Otherwise, we have a bigger problem. Otherwise, Aron,
they don't.
Listen, Aron, we need to have a dialogue here, not
the universe. First law of thermodynamics. Remember,
Aron.
Wait, hold on. Wait. First law of thermodynamics. Material energy cannot be created or destroyed. So it didn't need to be. Every model of cosmogony I'm aware of begins with a singularity. Not nothing, but a singularity. So you're arguing that if things were not the way they are, if they were completely different than they are, opposite of what they are, then you might have an argument for God. But only that one argument, where if reality is wrong, then you're right.
Aron, you see, I'm arguing for something that's even Aron. I'm arguing for something that's even more fundamental than the first law of thermodynamics. I'm arguing as to why does the first law of thermodynamics even exist? Now, inevitably, every single explanation that we pursue that has an explanation, there needs to be a starting point, a grounding explanation for everything, because the alternative, Aron, is an actual infinity, an infinite amount of explanations, or something that is...
You don't need an infinite number of explanations. You don't need an infinite regress to explain an eternal aspect. If the universe is eternal, it's eternal. It doesn't need an explanation.
And if you say that it does,
if you say that eternal things still need an explanation, then you better explain the origin of your God.
Okay, but I can do that, but I could do that, but I'm just scared. As soon as I start my explanation, you're going to already jump in with something else. So I need to be very delicate with my wording here. At the end of the day, you're the host, and you're dominating this conversation with every attempt that I try. You're shutting it down before I even can formulate past my first or second sentence.
Try something valid.
Well, the validity is something that can only be expressed once I can finish my point, but you don't let me finish my point, Aron. So I can tell you why an eternal universe is just nonsensical. We can talk about that, and then we could talk about why God makes...
Well, why don't you argue with physicists? Why don't you argue with physicists about why the universe that they're proposing is invalid? I said, my degree is in anthropology. You want to talk about anthropology? You want to talk about comparative religions? You want to talk about evolution? Then talk to me. But I get the impression that if you were on a call-in show with a physicist, if Sean Carroll was on this show, you'd be talking to him about evolution. I bet you. Because that would be the weak spot that you would attack with him.
There are also a lot of physicists as well that point out issues with an eternal past, and there's also debate within the own scientific community. My debate is with you. If you are taking everything that a segment of the physics community is saying, then you are doing that as a leap of faith, and that also then becomes...
How would it be a leap of faith to admit that I don't know, and I don't care, and it doesn't matter? Because it's literally irrelevant.
Because you're still holding what some physicists are saying to be clear.
It does not matter whether the universe... It doesn't matter whether the universe had a beginning. That doesn't change the fact that we are evolving apes, and the Bible and the Quran and all of the other religious scriptures are absolute hogwash. They're made up folklore with no truth in them. No significant truth, anyway. We know that there's places like Ethiopia and a Tigris River and all that, but that's it.
Dude, I'm not religious, so you don't have to go off about the Quran or the Bible. Neither.
That's
We're
fine.
both in agreement.
So you said that natural science was insufficient to explain. So that's two things you've set up there. One, you have to show that it's insufficient to explain, and you haven't. And then two, you have to have an alternative that is sufficient, and you ain't got one.
I've pointed out to a degree, although not in its entirety, why science cannot explain why anything is.
And I pointed out how you were mistaken, and you refused to acknowledge that I pointed out how you were mistaken. So, given that you failed that part,
actually, no, Aron, that's not true. Because when I went to go to explain the point, Aron, when I went to go and explain why some of these theories fall short, your line of defense is, well, I'm not a physicist, therefore I don't know. So, in fact,
that wasn't my line of defense. My line of defense was at the crux of it, Aron, again, let me finish and we can take goes. At the crux of it, when I pushed you to it, you said that I am not a physicist, but you are still trying to defend points of view that are you a physicist? Are you a physicist?
I'm not a physicist, but
then shut up.
I'm not a physicist, but I'm
talk about something you know. I know physics better than you do, apparently, even though neither of us are physicists. Talk about something you know and make a valid argument instead of wasting our time. Because there's another cult, there's another atheist, or there's another theist in the queue. We could talk to them. They've been waiting on hold for a while. Do you have an argument?
And whenever you want to terminate this conversation, I'm happy to, but I'm just trying to make a point that this is, again, not a physics-related discussion. And I can point out...
Why are you basing your entire argument on physics?
No, my entire argument is why things like an eternal past cannot exist and why there cannot be an infinite chain of explanations.
And I've heard physicists explain how an eternal past is possible, in which case you should argue with those physicists. If you want to argue that, go argue with the fact that I can't argue with you. You have to. Okay, again, I explained to you, it does not matter if the universe had a beginning or not. Either way, there is no indication of God.
And I would say this much, Aron. If the entire scientific community could agree that we have an explanation as to why anything at all exists, then yeah, I would concur. But they don't. So even amongst this community that you keep referring to, there is not a unanimous verdict, right? And so I can have an opinion on it. You can have an opinion on it, but I can't challenge your opinion to the nth degree because you don't have an argument. I don't know.
You were telling me that initially you started this out by saying that science was insufficient to explain. How did you say you had a contingency argument that adds credence to the existence of God? Somehow we never got to that.
We haven't got to that.
Last we were on that part of the conversation. Amir was defining a naturalist for us, and I believe, Amir, you said you were trying to get a naturalism and naturalism on equal footing, and that kind of stuck out. That kind of stuck out to me because I don't think that's possible by these definitions and by what we currently know. Because you can try to equalize the two as simply saying, well, they're just two sides of the same coin. They're opposite positions about this really tough question. And sure, you can boil it down as much as you can, but there's still a fundamental problem there that will never make them equal. And that problem is, as a naturalist, as a methodological naturalist, I know nature exists. The thing that I'm considering to be the sufficient explanation for all we see, we can verify exists. We all agree it exists. We can all measure it. We can do stuff with it. Okay? With the anaturalism or supernaturalism, as the internet calls it, you are now positing something that has not been demonstrated. We don't have evidence for. It is speculation. And until you can actually produce an example of it, I guess that might be a good question, Amir. You can hand wave at our limitations in science. You can hand wave at thinking that it's nonsensical. Any explanation we can come up with naturalism is nonsensical. You didn't mention contradictions in there. You just simply said it doesn't make sense, which that's a problem on its own, but we'll let that go. I can ask you, Amir, can you present to me one example of something that is not natural so we can at least just bring that category of items into the pool of consideration? Can you present me one example of something that's not natural?
Can I produce one example of something that is not natural?
Yes. Just show me it exists. Just show me it's real.
When you say show me it exists, show me it's real, is that like get a telescope out, point it at the sky, give you a particular coordinate, and hey, if there's God waving on the other side, you'd be like, oh, actually, you know what, God does exist? Because that's not the line of inquiry that we can take to build credence.
Okay, so here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. When you ask me, hey, produce me something that's natural, I'll hold up this pen and say, hey, this pen is a natural object in the natural world we live in. I've given you an example.
That's not fair.
No, it's absolutely fair. No, hold on. Because I can't sit here and say, well, I don't know what explains this pen, so I can now invent something that I can't show to others, that I can't demonstrate. I can assign it whatever attributes willy-nilly that I want. And then I can say, well, the pen's explained by this thing. I could call it unicorns. Aron calls it magic. Other people call it the supernatural, or if you just want to be completely accurate, it's the not natural. Yeah.
Again,
what I'm trying to get at is naturalism and anaturalism will never be on equal footing until anaturalism can show us that something outside nature actually exists. And you said, well, would we just point a telescope in the sky and see God? I don't know how you would do that. That's not my problem to define how you would do that. It's up to you as the person making the claim that this thing exists is to show us some type of evidence it exists. Until then, I have every justification to reject it and say, I'm not going to consider this as an explanation. The same way that I don't consider the super duper natural as an explanation for the supernatural, and so on and so forth. I don't need to consider this because yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought that was when you were done.
No, okay.
No worries.
We can wrap it up. Look, guys, I'll say this much. First and foremost, thank you so much for giving us theists the time to debate these really important issues. I know these things get often a little bit heated during the time, but we're all very passionate about trying to investigate the truth.
I agree.
And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. You guys are both highly intelligent people, and I really appreciate the time. And yeah, hopefully maybe I can call back in the future. We can continue trying to hash this out a little bit more. But otherwise, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Amir. And hopefully you never get to know me. Hopefully you never get to know me actually in real life, because I will completely change your mind about the intelligence thing. But thank you so much.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Amir. All right, so we're gonna pick up. We got 3 callers in queue, and we just had this is 4 in a row. This is probably the best for the number of theists and callers that I've ever seen. Yeah. So we're gonna jump in order. We're now talking to Pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, in Arizona, and the question put up here is, why do you believe science disproves God? Well, doesn't that assume that I believe that science disproves God?
I mean, do you?
Why would I have to disprove what has never been and a possible absurdity that has never been substantiated?
Well, because when you look at the Bible and all of that,
well, we can disprove the Bible, but that doesn't disprove God, does it?
No, I'm saying that the Bible isn't necessarily hinged on proving God. It's whether or not
but the Bible is it's not relevant either.
Existence.
Right, the Bible isn't relevant either. If you disprove the Quran, do you disprove God?
I mean, what are the fundamental claims that the Quran makes?
Does it matter?
Of course,
the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Kitab-i-Aqdas of Baha'u'llah, the Urantia book. There's a whole bunch of different books that are written by people that are all presented as if they are the infallible, revealed Word of God. They're all books written by people. We know for certain that people wrote every word of those books, not God. God didn't write any of those books. So you could disprove all of those books. That wouldn't disprove God.
And Pleasure, the question itself, Pleasure. Sorry, Pleasure. The question itself is fairly...
a bit of a lag, so...
There is a lag. Bear with us. We're not stepping on you on purpose. The question itself is a loaded question when you look at it. Why do you believe science disproves God? And I don't say I believe science disproves God. I think currently the God propositions put forward are outside of science's ability to examine. So if it's outside of science's ability to examine, some God claims, other God claims might be within the realm, and we can maybe, like if somebody posits a God, this is a God that can that exists both as a basketball and not a basketball. We can look at that and go, okay, we can see a contradiction there, and we can use the scientific method to determine whether that's true or not. We can maybe disprove a silly defined God like that. But once you generalize and abstract the God enough where it's like, okay, well, he's outside of space and time. He exists in all places at all times. He's mysterious. He'll frustrate your tests because he doesn't really want you to know that he's there or not. Once you push that God out into that hazy cloud of ambiguity, then it's well outside of science's ability to test. So we don't believe science disproves God.
If I come to you and I say that 46% of people believe that they're Napoleon, you would challenge me on where I got that figure. You would want me to show that there were studies done, that there were polls conducted that showed 46% of some sizable group of people that showed that you would want me to substantiate my claim. If I told you that there was no such thing as Australia, or if I told you that Benjamin Franklin was the first president of the United States, you would go to correct me. And if I try to argue against it, you would demand that I show documentation to prove it, right?
But you're referencing arguments that lack significance, in the sense that why would I care if
I'm making statements you should not accept. I'm making statements that you should not accept unless I can back them up. If I tell you that I had coffee this morning, you wouldn't care.
When you say it's something that I should not accept, you're defining good or bad, right? But whether or not Benjamin Franklin did exist doesn't have any significance on my life, right? So you say, oh, well, you shouldn't accept that. Well, it doesn't matter whether I accept that because I go on life regardless of whether or not it's true. So there's some claims that you can make are insignificant to whether.
Pleasure. It's not the nature of the statement that Aron is trying to focus on. He's trying to show you how you're essentially using one methodology for very common, very mundane claims, but then when it comes to this other set of claims, you're using a completely different system. Maybe to really kind of generalize it, in general, when you hear a claim, doesn't matter what the claim is, but when you hear the claim, do you believe the claim or do you not believe the claim? What's the safer option?
Well, depends relative to me, because I don't have any reason to believe it. So why would I believe it?
Exactly. That's the answer.
You nailed it right there. If you don't have a reason to believe it, why? No, hold on, Pleasure.
Within the context of religion.
Pleasure. Hold on, Pleasure. Take a moment there and revel in your breakthrough there. Okay, you just admitted that if there's a claim that I have no reason to believe, I shouldn't believe it, and I think that's a great starting point. I do that with all claims. Okay. Even with the most mundane claims,
reason to believe it. Sorry.
Okay.
You're saying that no reason to believe something if there's no reason to believe it, right?
Right.
If you have no reason to believe something,
no reason to believe something is a good reason not to believe it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you understand, Pleasure. You understand Pleasure. Pleasure. You understand that not believing something isn't the same as believing it's false, right? You understand the difference there?
I mean, functionally, they're the same thing.
Well, okay, functionally maybe, okay, but we're actually talking about like logic and truth claims here, and whether something's actually true or not true. Okay, but you understand that within these
outside of whether or not it's functional or not.
Why would we care whether something's okay? It's still functional in a degree that we are trying to get to whether something is actually true or not. Okay, so the default position.
But why does it matter if it's
it goes back to the breakthrough you just had. You say you're going to reject belief.
Hold on. Before you go any further, Eric, what did he just say? Why does it matter if? Say that whole sentence again. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Because you were referencing.
No. Don't say because you were.
Whether or not.
Say the sentence I didn't hear. I want to hear it again. Why does it matter if? And then I didn't hear the rest. Say that.
My mind went past it.
Okay, so he was talking about discerning whether something is true, and it sounded to me like you were asking, what does it matter if it's true?
No, I said what is it? Yeah, actually, yeah, I did say that. What does it matter if it's true?
You did ask, what does it matter if it's
you're
true?
talking about some of this.
Okay, that's the fundamental issue. If you care what the truth is, you're going to end up being atheist. If you don't care what the truth is, then you're going to make up some other shit and believe that instead.
Well, actually, the Bible hinges on the truth, but it doesn't make any explanation.
No, it doesn't. Not anywhere in it.
Gravity.
Not anywhere in it.
If you
it is
try to
full of bullshit and lies. It's
evolution,
man-made mythology,
it does not make
and most of the
reason
important
why
stuff
I'm
either
saying it
is
doesn't
not
matter
evidently true, or it's
it's in
evidently
reference
not
to human
true.
life.
Excuse me. Shut up
Wait,
for
I'm
a
sorry,
moment.
but there's a bit
The
of
Bible
a lag.
does not hinge on
So, like, I
truth.
don't
The
know when
Bible
you're
is
done
based
speaking.
entirely on fantasy folklore and myths and legends. Does not hinge on truth. There's no truth, no significant truth that you can find in it. As I said earlier, there's a river called Euphrates. There's a country called Ethiopia. There was a guy named Herod who was king at one point, but there's not a whole lot of actual truth. And none of the important stuff, none of it is actually true. Not a bit of it. There's not one bit of the important stuff that you can show is actually true. And you can't say that it's true unless you show the truth of it, the evidence leading to that conclusion. If it's just an empty assertion, then we're done. That's the problem. When you say something is true, you have to be able to show that is, you have to be able to show the truth of it. Show me that it is true.
Is it okay if I get a minute to speak? Just 1 minute? Because there's a
you see me drinking out of my cup. Do you think I'm going to interrupt you? That's your opportunity to speak, sir.
Well, because I'm not watching it. I'm on a call, so I can't really see you doing anything.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just get a minute because there's a bit of a lag. So when it comes to whether or not the Bible is true, well, it's not a full comprehensive understanding of the truth. That's what God is. God is the truth in its fullness. However, when God manifests His Word in a human form, which is Jesus, Jesus doesn't come and explain the fullness of the universe to us, right? And it gives us something important, is that we don't need to know everything about the truth. However, we do need to have a relationship with what is true. So whenever we create logical presumptions about the world, for instance, don't hop off a cliff, right? That truth functionally has a function within our lives because it allows us to exist, right? So if I said
no, you keep saying right when you say things that are wrong. That's confusing.
Okay, go ahead.
So one, you not only do you not have a relationship with the truth, you apparently are not even on speaking terms. You have to understand what the word truth means. How would you discern whether something is the truth?
Well, if it's independent of your observation.
That doesn't quite make sense.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the definition of actually objectivity is whether or not something is independent.
Well, we're not asking you to define objectivity. We're asking you to define truth.
I mean, some objectivity and truth are highly linked together. I haven't looked up the definition for it, so
perhaps maybe I can just put forward a definition that you might like. Truth is that which comports to reality.
Yeah, what you can show to be true.
What's your definition of reality? So, truth and reality.
What you can show to be true.
Reality.
What you can show to be true.
Just because what if you can't show it to be true doesn't mean it's not true?
Then it's not true. If you can't show that what you're saying is the truth,
your opinion, though,
it's not. I do not have to believe you unless you can verify that what you're saying is true. You show me that it's true, and then I'll accept that it's true. I'm not going to believe it just because you say so.
Independently of whether or not you can show it.
What?
The truth exists independent of whether or not you can show it.
No, it doesn't. The truth is what we can say. That's
literally what it is.
The word truth is based on our statement about what we can say to be true. Things may be true,
but just because
we don't yet know,
true,
we can't call it a truth until it is observed, until we can verify it. Then once we know it, when we can show it, then we can call it truth.
Yes, but your experience of the truth, it is not limited to your experience of it, or whether your understanding of it, or whether or not you claim it to be true.
Yes, it is.
I can make assumptions about what you did this morning.
Philosophically,
I can logically prove them to be true, and then people can believe it to be true. But just because I make those claims doesn't and show evidence, quote unquote, doesn't necessarily make it
just because
true.
you make that. Hold on, let's stick with that because you said something correct there. Just because you say something is true doesn't mean that it is true. Got it. Yes, that's correct. So if you tell me, if I meet you out in public somewhere and you say you're desperate to get to someplace and you need a ride, you're going to give me $100 to give you a ride to the hospital or to a hotel or wherever, right? I don't necessarily believe that you're going to give me a $100 to give you this ride. I might just do it because I'm a nice guy. I might do it because there's a hope there. I'm hoping that you're correct. I would like to believe that you're going to give me $100 when I drop you off there, but that doesn't mean that I believe it. I'm expecting that there's a good. I'm weighing multiple hypotheses at once. I'm expecting that when we get there, you might just jump out of the car and say "fuck you," and I don't get my $100. I don't actually believe you, but I don't necessarily believe that you're lying either. I don't believe you until you can show me.
There's a way.
If you hand me the $100 before we leave, before we leave, yeah, we're good. Now I believe you.
But what you're not understanding is whether or not you believe it to be true. You look through the actions to determine whether or not you believe it. So, say for instance,
I don't. I need the evidence.
$100.
I need the evidence to convince me. And prior to that, I don't believe.
And said, "Hey, I'm going to receive those $100." Then you're going to say, "Okay, well, I acted in a way accordance with this knowledge, meaning I believed it to some extent." Right? That's what generally faith is described as.
I might do it. I might do it out of the hope of $100. I might do it just because you're desperately in need, and I've been desperately in need, and so I'm sensitive to that. I might do it if I believe that you're lying to me. I might still give you a ride just because you need a ride, even if I don't. Even if I'm convinced that you're full of shit.
If you did not believe
what we're talking about is we don't believe that the default option is non-belief. You have to convince me, because if I am unconvinced, I do not believe.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
You're not operating from a position of non-belief.
No, belief is a conviction, and a lack of belief is a lack of conviction. You have to convince me.
Yeah.
So convince me that there's a God.
Pleasure. I operate my life in the same way. So when I say I don't believe in God and operate my life, I'm doing it the same way.
Right.
Considering I don't also believe in unicorns. Right. So,
right. But the existence of unicorns is independent of your belief. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So
sure, it's an objective. It's an objective claim.
God is independent. You're right. The existence of God is independent of whether or not you believe in God. However, within the human story or the human context, there's a role that God plays, right? And
there's also a role. Hold on. There's also a role. There's also a role that Ra played. There's also a role that the Great Juju in the tree played. Like, there's all kinds of God roles in mankind's history that doesn't establish those things as being real or actually existing.
Yeah, but anytime you want to say something and then you follow it with the word right, as if you're asking me if that's right, so far, every one of those examples has been wrong.
I mean, it's just a verbal tick, so.
Okay.
It's fine.
I don't know why you care.
But these are the premises for your argument, and so far you haven't had a valid one.
Yeah. So pleasure.
It doesn't mean it's not valid. That's what I'm trying to communicate.
Pleasure. We're diverging here.
Of reality to
pleasure.
Huh?
Pleasure. Where we're diverting here is the Bible. Okay. You said earlier that a good position to take is withholding belief until evidence is presented. We do not believe the Bible is an accurate reflection of reality. We have yet to be presented that that's the case, so we don't believe it. That's where we're at. I take it you're the opposite. I take it that you do believe that the Bible is an accurate representation of reality. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. That's where we're diverging. That's where we're diverging. Okay. What reasons do you have to believe that the Bible is true and present it in a way where we should also accept that?
So I believe the Bible is something that I could mold my life after, because I've experienced.
Please don't.
For instance, the Book of Proverbs.
So anybody that really uses the Bible exclusively as their moral guide would be a criminal in every country on this planet. Please don't tell me that you turn to the Bible for morality.
Let's
it advocates child sex trafficking, right?
Let's just walk with him just a little bit here. I want to give him a little bit
morality.
Yeah, Pleasure. Hold on. Let's not get too caught in the weeds here. Okay, let's give him just a little bit of rope here. So Pleasure, you said that the Bible changed your life. Is that one of the reasons why you believe it's true?
I never said that.
Okay, I'm sorry. So can you repeat that? Repeat your explanation back to me again. Why do you think that the Bible is an accurate depiction of reality?
Because when I analyze it through the lens of literary analysis, I find that there's a lot of wisdom in it and a lot of applicable wisdom with it in regards to my life. There's also the concept.
Hold on. I'm going to stop you on every point because I want to analyze each point. Okay, and I'm going to let you get to the next point. Can a book have wisdom? Can a book have literary value and not be from a god?
Yes.
Okay. So that reason
I never
itself.
Said that I believe in the Bible because
I thought I just asked you earlier. That's where we're diverging. That's what you said.
Well, there are multiple reasons by which I believe in the Bible, right?
Okay, now you're back to you are believing in the Bible. Pleasure. Yeah, pleasure. You're kind of flopping all over the place here, and we're probably going to drop here pretty soon.
Well, because you're interrupting me a lot. You're
saying Pleasure. You're saying contradictory things. Okay, do you believe the Bible's true?
What do you mean by true? Like it exists? Yes, it exists.
True. Has true statement.
Hold on. All of the stories. Do you believe that all of the stories in the Bible are literally factually accurate in everything they say?
Well, the Bible is full of metaphor, figurative language, and literal.
The answer is no.
Descriptions of the truth. Do
you believe that the Bible came from a god in one form or another? Did it come from a god? Okay. Do you think that God wants to have this book given to us to help us learn about him?
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think that's the case? Because we don't believe that's the case. You do. So that's where we're diverging.
And we've got pretty solid arguments against it too.
Yeah. So give me your first reason for why you believe that the Bible is from a god.
The reason why I believe it's from a god is because
first reason.
It's written through multiple periods of history and cohesive through those points of history. And then there are
cohesive. You mean is that your way of saying that it's wrong? Because it's wrong about everything.
Yeah, pleasure. Can a book be written by multiple authors over a great period of time and still be cohesive and not be from a god?
No.
Is that possible?
Well, there would have to be some uniting force that makes it cohesive.
That's a yes or a no. Is it possible for a book to be written by multiple people over a long period of time and still be cohesive without a god? Yes or no?
No.
It's impossible. Really?
Well, firstly, you need to define God.
Why?
And that's probably one of the biggest things.
Oh my God! Okay, pleasure. You know, you know what we're talking about here. So you're way into troll Terry at this point. Pleasure. I'm going to call you out. You're way into troll Terry at this point. So we need to bring it back to this, or we're going to move on to somebody that's more serious.
Speak and then you'll get my point because you've been.
I'm asking. You've had plenty of time to speak, and I'm asking you questions now. Pleasure. I really need to know.
Right.
All right. Why do you believe that the Bible's from God? And you said, well, it's written by multiple authors over a long period of time and is cohesive. Assuming that's true, which I disagree with that statement about it being cohesive over a long period of time, but let's just go ahead and just roll with it.
There's an awful
Assuming
lot of
that's true,
to be cohesive.
How does that link it to a God gave it to us?
Well, because there's some uniting force that makes it cohesive.
That uniting force could just be the people themselves.
Yeah. Okay. They had a vaguely similar belief. They believed in slightly different gods, but then they adapted some. They re-edited some of the stories in their compilation. We know that human editors threw out a bunch of books out of the Old Testament, and then a bunch of other editors made a compilation of the New Testament, and then further editors removed a bunch of books from the New Testament too. And all of them contradict each other, and all of them say things that we can prove are factually false. At what point is God involved in that?
I mean, I read the book, I've analyzed the book, and based off of all my reading and analysis, there's wisdom that's beneficial within my life. There is evidence of
the
it within
wisdom,
a spiritual
the wisdom
context,
that's relevant to your life.
Logistics.
Is that like when Moses commanded his men to murder all of the Midianite adults and all of the little boys,
Yes.
but you could only keep alive the little girls that were still virgins, and you could keep those as sex slaves? Does that have relevance in your life?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, you are a troll, and you're gone.
Well, because you have not even taken the moment to define what God is, right? And you haven't.
Yeah, I did. I did. I said earlier on this very show. I said earlier on this very show. I said earlier on this very show that every god ever worshipped was a magical, anthropomorphic, immortal. Therefore, the definition of God is magical, anthropomorphic, immortal.
So when you define God as something that you don't understand,
that is not what I said, is it? Although, yeah, magical is by definition what you don't understand. That's true.
Yeah,
that's where blessings and curses and all of that come from. The Bible's full of magic.
Something you don't understand, like what benefit does that do?
Well, how does a golem spell work? Because the Talmud has the rabbinical scholars admitting that Adam was created as a golem spell. Now you said you believe the Bible. Do you believe what?
Actually, so
what?
We can dive into that. Why do you think that's important?
Why do I think it's important? Because you said that the Bible.
What significance does that play?
Do you believe in golem spells? Do you believe in incantations where God speaks things into existence literally by saying abracadabra? Do you believe that all of the blessings and curses and all of these enchantments and necromancy and all of that's in the Bible, transfiguration and soothsayers and
forbidden? So
forecast? Yeah,
why would
the Bible's
I dive?
full of it, isn't it? What are blessings and curses?
Okay,
they're
so
magical enchantments. What is the golem spell? Is a spell. Leviticus 14 lists other spells. There are spells all through the Bible. There's magic everywhere in the Bible. Faith healing is magic. I'm sorry, what?
Okay, so when you're referencing that story about how God created Adam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So firstly, the significance that story plays is not so that we can magically replicate how God created the universe or replicate how God created Adam. That's not the point. But there is spiritual significance in the sense that Adam, the form of human, it was empty when God created it. And when God
we know that that's just a fairy tale. Literally, we know that that's a fairy tale. Literally, so it has no relevance to the reality in which we're talking now. That is an adaptation of a handful of earlier Semitic legends from previous polytheism, from Mesopotamian mythos mostly. What?
Within the colloquial understanding of magic, there is this mysticism in the sense that you just don't understand it, right? And that
there is not supernatural, which by definition is what you don't understand.
Say that it is, but biblically speaking,
do you believe in the supernatural?
Something that exists, however, it's something that we should not practice. And within the context of the Bible, magic is the manipulation of spiritual things or spiritual forces.
Right, but we know we don't have spirits.
Forbidden for humans because
we know that we don't have spirits, and we know that the Bible is full of folklore about things that never happened.
You don't have spirits when you can't observe them.
Well, because we know not just that we don't have evidence of them precisely where it would be if they were real, but that we have enough evidence against them from neuroscience. I've talked to a bunch of neuroscientists and neurophilosophers about this. They are convinced. What's that?
Define a spirit.
A supernatural aspect of a self that somehow survives the death of the physical body to continue on in some other form. Not possible. There is no mind-body dualism. There's no support for that at all. Not only is there no support for it, but there's substantial evidence against it. We don't have souls. The Bible is full of stories that did not really happen. Tower of Babel, Adam and Eve, the Great Flood, all that shit, the Exodus, nonsense. None of that happened. We know that. We can prove it. So using the Bible, a bunch of already falsified folklore that talks about how the earth is flat and says a bunch of other ridiculous things is not going to be a good argument for God.
When does the Bible say the earth is flat?
All over the place.
Where?
Mythicist Milwaukee general video on this where they go through
first of that.
Yeah, I can show you many, but I don't want to take up a bunch of time on it. We got 2 other people waiting in queue. But I've made videos on this.
You can't even
Mythicist Milwaukee
to a general location like a book or a story. So how can you hinge on
look
not
at
being
Job,
true
for
based off of
example.
that?
Yeah, because I've told you, we've gone through all of the biblical references to the shape of the earth, how it, in Job, for example, God says that the earth takes the form of clay under a seal, which means that it's round disc with a little bit of topography on it because of the stamp. That's just in one place.
Sense,
Elsewhere, it describes the earth as a flat disc divided in 4 parts, like in quadrants, like north, south, east, and west. And then there's a dome that goes over the earth, and then there's water above the dome, and the sun somehow inside the dome.
Ever using the Bible?
What?
I've never heard.
Yeah, that's in the Bible.
Inside the Bible.
It is inside the Bible. I'm sorry, what?
Okay, well, look at it later. But when you're understanding the Bible or refuting its claims, you have to understand the primary claims that it's founded on. A, God exists.
I do.
B, okay.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at...
Here's something I wrote about that. So this will help you. If the Bible is interpreted literally, then it is clear that the authors believed that the world was spread out like a map or a flat disk, as in the shape of clay under a seal. That's Job 38:14. Not a sphere, but a circle, and this is the way it was described in Isaiah 40:22. They specifically chose the word for circle rather than sphere. And then divided into 4 quadrants, which is in Isaiah 11:12, sometimes mistranslated as corners. This disc world stood on pillars, that's 1 Samuel 2:8, like a table so that it would not move. That's according to Psalms 93:1 and 1 Chronicles 16:30. All of this was submerged in a watery abyss covered by a giant transparent crystal dome like a snow globe. That's Genesis 1:7. And then the sun, moon, and stars were contained within the expanse of this. And this is according to Genesis 1:14 of this massive dome. And this is also described in Ezekiel 1:22. It goes on and on and on. I've written an awful lot about this. I know other Bible scholars, actual Bible scholars, who have also written an awful lot about this. Yes, the Bible explicitly, repeatedly describes the world as flat. It does not allow for the true cosmology.
Yeah, but in the material sense or spiritual sense?
Spiritual just means not really, just spiritually. That's when it's pretend as opposed to reality. Yes, I gave a speech on that as too. Yeah, when Harold Camping said that the world was going to end at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on May 21st of 2011, and he told me that he said that the world was going to crack in half, and people were murdering their children to save them from Satan because of what he was saying. People spent all of their money. They had no money left because they thought that the world was about to end. There's no reason to save anything anymore. People just destroyed their lives. And then when the time came, the world didn't end. But then Harold Camping said, well, it ended, but it ended spiritually, which means it didn't happen in reality.
Do you believe him to be a prophet? Is that what you're claiming?
That is not at all remotely similar to what I said. I now have to go with Eric on you being a troll.
Well, there is a reason why. Because the way
we're done.
The Bible describes
let's go and drop this call.
Is whether or not someone is...
Goodbye.
Wait. Okay, bye.
So, Pleasure, I'm still not convinced. We got to drop you. Still not convinced that the Bible's true. You have done nothing to help even sway me an inch towards your position. The 3 things you gave me, that it's a literary, that it has unity across, generations of authors, that it changes lives. None of those necessitate a God. There's other books that can also do those things. Yeah. So Pleasure, if you really were serious about getting us to believe what you believe, you really need to reevaluate your approach there. Because every time you give me a reason for saying, this is why I think the Bible is from God, you need to ask yourself, is that really a logical link between what you're giving and a God being behind the book? Because I have yet to come across anybody with that question that gave me a good answer. Because there's always something else in there.
I would pursue this argument if I thought you were sincere, but I can no longer believe that.
Yeah. There's always something in there that can be a problem. And that's the thing. Like, think of like a mathematical proof, A mathematical proof is like, you're going to get to the answer and you're going to show how the answer is inescapable using the data you have. I want something like that from you, Pleasure, or another theist. I want something that is inescapable. I want you to give me something, to demonstrate to me something, explain to me something where it is inescapable that a God is behind this book. Because up to now, nothing's ever happened like that. I'm practically begging you for it. Anyway.
Yep, I'm done. So we're going to move on to another caller, and we're going to hope we're going to get a sincere one. Okay, so the next ones, I've got two more here, and I'm going to take them in order of receipt. This one has been on hold for 50 minutes.
Theist too.
Well,
good.
Yep. I will apologize for that. We are speaking now with Prophet Daniel Has Spoken, which already makes me believe that I'm probably another troll. Can you hear us?
That's very not nice about starting a conversation by calling me a troll. Is that nice?
I suspect it based on your name.
Morals?
Daniel, it was a little.
Why do you bring in judgment even before you talk to me?
Daniel, it was a little
because you chose that name.
No, look, the way you mentioned troll, even before you've spoken to me, that explains your character.
So are you a troll then? Because you seem to be proving the point.
You got to apologize to me and receive me with respect.
Because I think I was correct. You get a few minutes to prove that I was wrong by showing that you are sincere.
No, look, you have no
Since
morals.
you are already refusing to do that, I'm already ready to drop this call. Yep, you better improve your performance here, or you're going to be closed out as a troll.
Look. Yeah, you're an American, right? You don't believe in equality, do you?
Hey, Daniel.
Yes, I absolutely believe you are absolutely a troll.
Hold on.
Good
You're
night.
a bloody American who doesn't believe in equality. You believe in the power of
Daniel, I got a question to ask you. Daniel, buddy, I got a question to ask you, and I'm asking this in all sincerity.
You got to apologize, man. You said to me, you received me by calling me.
All right, I'm going to mute you, Daniel. Daniel, I'm asking you this question in all sincerity. What's your priority here? Are you here to preach to us the good news about the Quran? Or are you here to complain about a joke we said at the very beginning of the call? What's your priority? And then go with that.
Me. Do you get my question?
You were talking the whole time, weren't you?
He just asked you a question, and apparently you didn't get it.
Daniel, what's more important here? Talking to us about the Quran or complaining?
It's calling the right behavior.
No, is that more important?
It's calling out the wrong behavior.
Is calling out the wrong behavior more important than talking about the Quran?
It absolutely is, because the guy has no decency even to begin a conversation.
All right.
Can I drop him, Warren?
I'm going to drop him.
He just told us what his priority is. He's here to complain. We don't care about complaints.
Yep. So that was an admission of trolling.
Yeah. All right, Daniel, and that's another thing too. I want to put a period on that because this is something that I appreciate more and more. Daniel, yes, it was a joke. It may have offended you. Oh, we lost the call in studio. Must be a sign from God. Daniel, it was a joke. If it offended you, grow a thicker skin. Don't let that hang you up. It's more important to talk to us about the Quran, I would say, than complaining about how you were treated. Don't expect to be treated fairly. You accept that, you can have more productive conversations. It was a joke. Anyway, go ahead.
Ready to connect. Let's connect the show now.
Yeah, we lost the show, did we?
I think I did it. I hit the thing to drop the call, and it dropped everything somehow.
I think we saw the caller though in the queue.
Call-in studio.
He's still here. Say that again, Morgan.
Call-in studio shut down.
I hit the drop call. I don't know how that closed everything.
I don't think you had anything to do with it.
Might be a bug.
Really? Okay. Well.
All right. Well, are we gonna try to bring it back online? Because we still have Ben in the queue there, I think.
Yep. We're gonna try to get to Ben.
Yeah.
Okay.
You are connected as the host. Welcome, host.
Okay.
You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the call-in studio web.
Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah, just shut
Audio
it down.
recording is on. Dual channel.
I love call-in studio. It's very verbose when you connect into it.
Did we got you?
I think so.
Yeah. Is this Ben?
This is Ben. Aron, big time fan. You have commented on some of my posts in the past year, and I really appreciate it, and I'm glad to be talking to you.
Thank you so much. All right. So you are down here as a theist, yes?
I am down there as a theist, but typically when I'm in discussion and debates on this topic, I get accused of being an atheist, so I'm perfectly fine with that accusation when it comes to me.
It's funny because it's funny because ancient Romans consider Christians to be atheists because of that.
Kind of a definition question, I would guess. I follow a lot of the physicists very carefully, along with you and Delahanty and a few others. My understanding, as far as physicists are concerned, is that we can't really deal with non-locality. We can't really we don't have a good definition of what an observation is in quantum mechanics. So most physicists tend to think that the universe is really one grand unified wave function. That's what it kind of is.
I think I remember Sean Carroll making that very argument.
Yeah, exactly. In one sense, I can see that being a description of, a type of God concept. But then I've kind of been thinking about this idea lately, which is that wave function can go through any possibility that's not denied by its configuration through the Schrodinger wave equation.
Okay.
One of those configurations could be a neural net. So in other words, you have a universe in one of its functions, which is basically one big mind, kind of like a big Boltzmann brain, if you're familiar with that term. Would that meet the definition, or is that still, because I guess it's not personal, it's not got any intent, I guess. I don't know if you could say that or not. Would that meet the definition or no?
Are you suggesting that the universe is a brain, or could be in your hypothetical situation?
No, I don't think it's probably not. I think that if that's one of the possible solutions to the Schrodinger.
Can you show that it's possible?
I'm trying to remember if Sean has said anything.
Oh.
Don't think that was it.
I think I'm the only one still here.
Looks like
something's very wrong. I think we lost Aron and the caller.
Am I not here?
Something's up. Something's going
you
way
went
wrong
in
here.
And out, so you're back, but you're chopping pretty badly. Oh, okay. Looks good now. Yeah, I shut down Call-in Studio. There's something wrong with it.
Okay, so all right. I don't know what happened. So we know how a brain works, right? We know that the millions and millions of synapses and how they connect with each other, and they make this network of communication to produce thoughts and muscle memory and all of that. Planets and stars and such don't seem to have that. At best, we have gravity, and that doesn't seem to be sufficient. So there's no kind of indication that the universe could be a brain or possible of any kind of cosmic consciousness. There's no indication that that is even possible. Do we still have our caller?
No, I think Call Studio's gone. Yeah.
There's
I think that's it for the
Call Studio. I shut it down.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess this is a short call. That is upsetting because we had a solid, what was it, 5, 6 theists?
Yeah, that was a good string of theists there.
Yeah, but we had a couple that obviously weren't serious.
Either weren't serious or had really, really messed up priorities. I have never, because if I ask a Christian, hey, what's more important, complaining about how you were treated or preaching me the good news? I think anybody who thinks about that will go, yeah, you know what? As a Christian, I think it's more important to preach the good news and just let any insults or jokes slide because there's more important things on the table here than
that wasn't a joke.
And worried about it.
That guy chose a troll name.
Seems like it.
So
I would take
if you did that accidentally, then show me that it was an accident.
Yeah. I always have that little bit of doubt in there. I'm like, okay, maybe this person's just really zealous about it. But it's fine. I mean,
if I say I think you might be a troll, that doesn't mean you are a troll. That's quite different.
Yeah, suspicions like with everyone you interact with, like literally everyone you interact with anywhere, there's a certain level of doubt about their sincerity. If I meet a complete stranger on the street, if I had to quantify it, maybe I'm at like a 5%. Okay, 5% this guy's out to get me my money, harm me or something. Then there's like 95% that he's just a guy and just wants to talk to me about something. And you can do things, introduce yourself with certain names, wear certain clothes, say certain things. It's going to push that 5% up to something higher. And I was like, oh, okay, what's going on here? So it's like, yeah, if you want to come in here and use a name like that, that's fine. If we say, hey, this is kind of odd, maybe a troll, I don't know. Like I said, just it's okay. It's okay. There's more important things on the table here. Talk to us about the good news. But it's fine. Maybe somebody reflect on it.
Wasn't he quoting a New Testament? Because I can't remember which name that he chose, but I thought he was quoting somebody from the New Testament.
But he's in defense Daniel,
of the Quran.
Prophet Daniel has spoken. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, never mind then.
Yeah.
I guess it's time to read the chats. Very good. Very good. All right. I'll do the first one. $5 from Stomp. I think that's how I pronounce that. Stomp 10. How would you two interpret Deuteronomy 22, 23, and 24? Is it condoning the unjust killing of a sexual abuse victim, or just talking about adultery? So I don't have a memory of that one. Deuteronomy 22.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Let's see here.
And what was it? Was it 22 and then 23 and 24?
Yeah, 22, 23 to 24.
Okay. If a man is found sleeping with another man's wife, both the man who slept with her and the woman must die. You must purge the evil from Israel. If a man happens to meet in a town or a town a virgin pledged to be married and he sleeps with her, you shall take both of them to the gate of that town and stone them to death. The young woman because she was in a town and did not scream for help, and the man because he violated another man's wife. You must purge the evil from among you. And this is when it says that you might have different rules in the country where we don't know if the woman screamed or not.
Yeah. And this is, I would say, this is unjust stoning because you don't know what circumstances that's happening under. It could be that screaming, calling out would guarantee your death. And it's like I've seen Jehovah's Witnesses, elders attempt to use the scripture when they were handling, sexual assault victims or accusations in the congregation. They'll go into detail about what happened, what body part went where. Did you scream? No. Why not? And if they aren't convinced as to your reason why you didn't scream, they will hold that against the victim. and it's gross.
You know, a lot of rapists are kind of knife to your throat kind of guys.
Yeah.
So that you wouldn't scream.
Couple that with the Jehovah's Witnesses. Couple that with their 2 witness rule. There's another part in the Old Testament that basically says that for any judicial action to be taken against somebody who's accused, 2 witnesses must be present for the offense. So when does that ever happen with sexual assault within a congregation here in the modern age, or almost ever? Almost never. There's a second witness there. So in those cases, the elders.
When you have 2 witnesses to the sexual assault, those are usually accomplices.
Accomplices, yeah. But basically, like this is just, these are archaic, terribly archaic, draconian, barbaric ways to handle justice. And it's fine because the people that wrote that scripture, Stomp, didn't know any better. Morality was underdeveloped back then. They didn't have the history and the education and the experience needed to make something better. So it's fine for those people to write something like that. I think for the most part, they were doing the best they could at the time. Reprehensible to us now, but it's the best they could do at the time. What's really shameful are the ignoramuses today trying to take this counsel and apply it to today when we have so many better methods to handle this kind of stuff. So yeah. And just another tangent, deconstruction junction or deconstruction zone, Justin, he has a really good talking point when in the case that a newly married couple in the Israelites, newly married couple, and for some whatever reason, the husband's like, I don't like this new wife. I'm going to accuse her of not being a virgin. So they go before the town council, and the husband says, this wife is not a virgin. It is up to the parents to then go retrieve the bed sheet used for the night of copulation on the wedding and show it to the elders and go, look at the bloodstain here. This is proof that she's a virgin. And this is a judicial proceeding in the Old Testament. The funny thing is, not funny, it's terrible. Only about 40 to 45% of women bleed their first time. So if this was an actual judicial procedure used back then and people were actually tried based on this, over half of them would be falsely accused and stoned to death of not being a virgin, because it is a bad process. So
it's just another reason that, the consistency that one of the previous callers was talking about for how we know the Bible is from God is that it has all these ridiculous rules that anybody with a knowledge of medicine would know better than. Yeah.
And for barbarians 3,000 years ago, it's fine. They didn't know any better. It's gross, but it's fine. Like I can't accuse them and condemn them for not knowing any better. But people today look at this and go, yeah, this is a good system. This was from God. And that's where it gets disgusting. And that's where we get all bent out of shape over it, because this is not good. This was never good at any point in time. Humans back then had the excuse, Theus, your God did not. He should have known better. He should have done better. And the fact he didn't tells me he doesn't exist. So, all right. My turn. Yeah. $5 from Zerth Moonpaw. Hey, Zerth. Thinking I'm going to make a full anti-theist D&D character. It's akin to a flat earther here. Yeah. In the D&D world, gods are a thing and gods are demonstrable. And there's it's way better evidence than we have here in our world. So yeah, just anti-theist D&D characters, absolutely. Just somebody just goes around denying the obvious evidence in front of them. Love it.
$9.99 from Baltathar 228. Wasn't the whole point of the Protestant Reformation that you didn't need a faith advisor to communicate with God?
Well, the Protestant movement was in reaction to the Catholic Church, which is all about confessions, right? So I would imagine that's probably baked in there somewhere. I don't know. I had to
think about that because that's probably a fair way to summarize it. I was remembering everything that Martin Luther was complaining about, but I guess if you summarize it come out that way.
Yeah. Those gross Catholic priests, they really want to be up in your business.
Because if they have your secrets, then they can blackmail you. $5 from Zurith Mumpaw. Fine. Seeing as a monkey is a butt munch, not anti-theist, hard atheist.
Fine. Seeing as Monkey is a butt munch. Okay.
Monkey at typewriter is a mod.
Oh, okay.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a butt munch. I do agree with you there, Zurith. Love you, Monkey. All right. Okay, I guess I'm next. $5 from Prisoner Fan 48. My first super chat. Hey, Prisoner Fan, thank you so much. That's great. I remember my first super chat. I remember my first time. Yeah, it's kind of exhilarating, like seeing somebody on screen like say your name and say your words, and you paid money for that experience. So, yeah, savor this. We look forward to the second one. Send us more money.
$10 from Little Potato. Proving the Bible, like trying to prove you just flew around the room, then trying to convince someone you did. Impossible to prove, even if it happened or not, even though it's impossible to begin with.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah.
There was a really good. I don't know if did I save it or not. I'm going to plug a brand new channel I just discovered. So if this one particular video was awesome, I have not watched the other videos. So if he goes completely off the rails in those other videos, I don't know about this. But there's a channel I discovered called Answer Man, and he has a video called "How Apologetics Sounds to Skeptics," and he basically takes the Christian explanation of Jesus and then why they believe, and instead of Jesus, he's talking about a cat from space, and it's great. It is so great. It fits right into that what you just mentioned there. This is my turn. Let's see here. $5 from Zurith Moonpaw. Saw a beautiful black rat snake in our yard. Hope it comes in and enjoys some of these mice we have. Yeah, let nature take its course. You got a pest problem, introduce some predators, and they'll balance out. Definitely better than laying poison everywhere. Like rent a hawk. Rent a hawk. Let it fly around your yard for a couple of days. You'll take care of your problems. Literally take your problems away. Like pick them up and take them somewhere else. So.
£5 from Mystic Minds Analysis Tavern. I will only say that there is no God when a God can be clearly defined as a concept. Who is this God person anyway? Which is a line out of Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah. I think this kind of what was the caller earlier? The troll. I know that probably doesn't really narrow it down. Caller earlier, was it Hampton? Amir? I don't know. Basically started diving into like what's mentioned here about how can you reject something you don't clearly define, or all that. That smacks quite a lot of that recent Jordan Peterson 20 atheists versus one Christian debacle. Because that was his old shtick there, was like, how do you reject something when you don't understand it? So yeah, it kind of feels like that's kind of in the Zeitgeist right now.
How do you, but the point is, how do you accept something you don't understand?
Yeah, exactly.
They're always trying to reverse. They're trying to get you to disprove God. I don't have to disprove what you have not substantiated. Quit shifting the burden of proof.
Absolutely. And even if it is true that I am in a position where I do not understand what I am rejecting, but my interlocutor says they accept it, then as you said, that means they have an understanding of it. And if I currently don't have an understanding of it, that's on my interlocutor to give me that understanding. And that's usually the questions we're usually asking when we're talking about like God, what the characteristics of God are, what does he do? How do we, if this is false, how do we know it, and all that kind of stuff. And it falls flat because any inability on my part to understand is partially my interlocutor's fault because they are failing to explain their case properly. So yeah.
I'll read this one, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it your turn? It's your turn. It's your turn.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, I'll go. Okay, sure. I lose track because once I say something, then my brain goes elsewhere, and then you talk, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm back to reality again. Okay, $5 from Cindy Bonbury. What's more reasonable to believe? An unlikely coincidence happened, or that a God exists? I used to ask my ex-boss theist this question often, and that is a good question to ask. I like framing it in terms of plausibility. You know, like what's more plausible, that somebody spontaneously healed from cancer, or that somebody actually was healed via prayer? Like what's more plausible there? And when we're listening to these stories, where do you bet your money? So yeah, it's a good way to look at it, Cindy. I like the way you think.
Next up, 1999 from Answers in Genetics. I like that name. I'm organizing my own much smaller fossil collection while watching this show. It's great to have it on in the background while working on some paleontology work. Keep up the great work, Aron and Eric. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm jealous. I want a fossil collection. All I got are video games. I want something more real.
I have very few fossils.
You got more than me then.
Yeah.
I was about to make a joke about my dad living next door, but I better not. Okay, I was going to say I got one fossil. Love you, Dad. $5 from Sarah Talks Podcast. On behalf of Bryce Barnett, Aron is the best Bandicoot. I still don't understand the Bandicoot thing. I must be missing something here. Sarah, in the chat, explain what the Bandicoot thing is. Maybe point me to a video. I don't know. I'm behind the times here. Sarah wanted you to read that one. Yeah. Sarah wanted you to read it.
$5 from Malmorius. That's Malmorius. Here's $5. Thank you.
Okay. I like self-explanatory super chats. $5 from Secular Felinist. I called the tinnitus hotline, but it just kept ringing. Oof. Ow, that's a good one. That's a good one. And I say that as someone who suffers from tinnitus, whatever you want to call it. It sucks. But that's a great joke. Thank you, Secular. Appreciate that.
$5 from Mark Fernkoff. Blue. Great meeting you this weekend, Aron. We lived 10 minutes from that barn for 2.5 years and never knew it was there. I can't believe 6-year-old Henry found a fossil on the property. Yeah, that whole place was pretty amazing.
$10 from Mike Internet 1941. Aron has my favorite what when posed with the incoherent. Yeah. The line should do a super chat, maybe for like an April Fool's thing or something. Like do a super cut of all the what the fuck faces that we've had. Numerous. What the hell is this? What am I hearing? Like it's weird because our brains are structured to handle reality in a certain way and everything. And when something
did we get it on this show?
What's that? Say it again.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. There's definitely a lag going on here. It's intermittent, though.
Something's up, but it's fine. Go ahead.
We did get an admission. On this show that when somebody admitted that it doesn't matter if it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't that happen today?
Yeah, I think so. Or they were arguing basically like, well, whether it's true or not, like what practical function does it serve us? Yeah. Okay. I guess I'll get this next one.
Things are weird. Weird things are happening.
Yeah, it's getting a little laggy there. I've noticed like it'll sometimes get really bad where even between the hosts, like the lag will increase, and I'm not sure. I think whoever's hosting vMix call, go find your internet cable and like go find the kink in it and like just kind of let those electrons flow a little bit better. No, I'm kidding. $5 from Bastille. Our conscience influences dimensionless power. Wow, somebody's been to the wisdomofdeepak.com. That's a good example right there. You look at that and your brain just short circuits like, what did I just read?
To $20 from Dave Thomas 94. If the Bible is literally true, I'm waiting for any one of my 23 snakes to start talking to me. I relish the day that happens. Yeah, I've got 57 at the moment. None of them have said a word.
$20 from Mr. Borakura 10. Amir and Pleasure being inconsistent in their arguments. Especially pleasure. This guy is flip-flopping harder than a hard night's sleep with flaming heartburn. Guy had the face to ask to complain about not speaking too much. Yeah, I got kind of weird there in the middle when trying to lock him into giving us his position in a concrete manner and clearly. And then once questioned, it was like backtracking and going, doesn't reflect reality. What is reality? What is God? He first said God did give us the Bible, and then he went back to what is God. It's like, well, no, hold on. You skipped the step there then. Yeah, just very, very weird. Probably a troll, most likely.
The thing with Amir is that he was pretty obviously a troll right from the get-go. And it's sad. I would hate to have dropped somebody that is sincere, but how often do you meet a sincere believer? Well, on a call-in like this, people just, when they have this belief that it's really, really precious to them, they don't challenge it. They won't call in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I usually, I don't like prescribing or reading other people's minds, but like sometimes when I see something like it really bent out of shape over it, or really just really needs to talk and not be responsive, and it kind of gives me the sense of like, okay, we got some like emotion insecurity going on there, and it's okay. Like I said earlier, like it's okay to be emotional insecure about things. We all are with certain things, but you need to put that aside and have a conversation, because if you can't do that, then we're just going to move on to somebody else.
And I just remembered, I never got to hear the contingency argument that would give credence to God. That never happened.
Yeah. Well, we got a little hung up on that a-naturalist thing, and like I said, Amir was trying to try to get that on the same footing as naturalism. It's like you'll never get there because one assumes something while the other does not. You'll never have them as equal. $5 from Mon.
Sorry, go ahead. You do it. It's yours.
$5 from Mon Reflektiert Sonnelich. Sounds German. Telling Aron to prove anything is always a good time for me. Is this the caller?
$5 from Space Barbarian. Argumentum
nice name.
At Wingium. Argument from whining? Wingium. Oh, there we go. Argument from whining.
Argument Wingium. Well, I'd prove to you I'd prove to you there was a God if you would just treat me better. Yeah, I like it.
That was Amir's argument. You called me a troll, therefore I'm not going to give you the argument you want to have.
Okay, yeah.
I'm waiting to hear. I'm waiting to hear his argument. He won't give it because he wants me to apologize for something he's doing.
Yeah. Okay, we have $20 alleged money or Canadian money from Ayla Ursus. Prophet Daniel has spoken is the name of his YouTube channel. He just wanted a clip of you apologizing to him. Yeah, that's plausible. Some people get out there, they just want to farm. They want to farm something. They have like a very specific objective, and they want to go for it. And a couple months ago, Forrest and I were on a call, and I think the person's topic was wants to talk about the afterlife, has good evidence of the afterlife. First thing they do when they come in, when they have no pronouns, they start dropping little like pieces of bait, like, "Oh, I'm Gen Z, and we're still talking about pronouns." And me and Forrest are there, and it's like, yeah, it's so obvious why you're here. Like, why are you here with this fake topic when you obviously want to talk about pronouns and all of that? And yeah, these people, like some of these people, you're so obvious, especially after the fact. You might be a little sneaky up first, but after the fact, you're like, it's so obvious what you're here for. Get out of here with that.
$10 from Dave Thomas 94. Can we just rid ourselves? It says ride, but it means rid. Just rid ourselves of evil and throw the Bible in the trash.
That would be nice. Let's keep the Bible. I want the Bible kept in a museum. I want people to still be able to read the Bible because we need to have an insight into our history. But we got to get it out.
Should be Harry Potter.
Yeah. Get it out of the classrooms, get it out of teaching kids what's right and wrong.
Fables.
Yeah. Oh, what's CRC?
Costa Rica.
CRC.
I could not tell you.
Costa Rica credits?
Okay.
But they're part of the United States, though, so they probably use the U.S. dollar, right? But it's whatever, fine. Costa Rica credits, 2,500. That's a lot of Costa Rica credits. Thank you so much, Johanna Vanderklee. Religious people are still stuck in their childhood and haven't outgrown their belief in fairy tales. For many, I think that is true. I mentioned my story a little bit earlier about how I was born into the Jehovah's Witness faith. And I will say that I did not get out because I was smart or that I figured things out or anything like that. I woke up purely out of luck. I think just life just kind of kicked me in the butt one too many times. It got me to a point where I started questioning things, and then I eventually woke up. It wasn't because I was like really super smart and was like thinking about it for a while. I had a very emotional start to my journey. That's not where I'm at now, but yeah. There's a lot of people that are still stuck in that, and adults, elderly people still holding on to those beliefs because they need those things. Go ahead.
I've never seen your video, but I'd be keen to hear that story.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I've done several interviews, but I haven't done one on my own channel yet, but I can maybe do one.
Okay. So $4.99 from Hannah Hodgins. Hi, Aron and Eric. Hey, Aron. Who's Aron? I work in an elementary school, and today was reptile day, and he brought in one of my favorite snakes, a gaboon viper.
Gaboon viper?
Okay. Yep, an elementary school, and they bring in a gaboon viper. That's one of the ones that terrifies me.
I was about to say, that snake looks, it's a viper. That's pretty scary. I would have a hard time.
Yep, the longest fangs of any venomous snake. And
yeah.
The hemotoxin is awful.
Highly venomous. Yeah, that's according to Wikipedia.
Next one up.
All right. $5 from Inane Glory. Is the Jordan Peterson method similar in concept to the rhythm method? I'm not sure.
I'm sure there's no correlation with your menstrual cycle.
I had to look it up because I've probably heard of it before, but I was like,
and we got another 2,500 Costa Rican credits from Johanna Vanderklee. Thank you very much. It says, if you want an uncomplicated life, become an atheist.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My life that drastically improved going from theism to atheism. Yeah, it's definitely way better way to live, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do want to hear that story. If you've got a link to it, or if you just when you got time.
Do you do interviews on your channel? We can maybe set something up on your channel. Yeah.
I'd be happy to schedule something with you. Hit me up an email, and we'll do it.
We'll do.
Just pick a day and time, and we'll do it.
We'll do. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, $10 from Dr. Griff. Aron, I have to give you and Dark Matter 2525, excellent channel, by the way, the credit for my deconversion from my old Calvinist cult around 8 years ago, just shy of my 18th birthday. Noah's flood is what got me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand. I didn't feel that it was really necessary to do that series when I did it, but there's been so many people that said that it was necessary for them. That they needed that, and I'm glad to have provided then.
Yeah, I've noticed there's more and more, because I ask myself this all the time, like, what the heck am I bringing to the table that hasn't been brought to the table already 50 times? Like, what makes me unique and new? And my current answer is nothing. But the topics that I pick to discuss, and a couple of my videos from a couple of years ago, I've had some responses saying, wow, this is what I needed to see. And I was like, whoa, really? Like, I actually, I hit the bullseye for somebody. And it's not gonna be like that for everybody, but whenever I'm picking topics now and I'm considering some new videos, I'm like, okay, is this gonna help somebody? And I hope it does, but you never know. Like, you'll say something a certain way and it just clicks with somebody and it gets them going. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's a good feeling. $10.
Is it my turn? Okay, go ahead.
I'll go again. No, why not? $10 from Dave Thomas 94. Regarding some of these calls, I refer to George calling. I have a low tolerance level for stupid bullshit, and everyone wants to tell you they're stupid bullshit. Yeah, it's true.
Yep. $5 from Monde. Oh, here's my turn to try to pronounce this. Monde reflektiert Sonnenlicht. I know I butchered that. But, Noah Call, but a longtime fan of Aron, also pronounced Monde reflektiert Sonnenlicht, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, by the way, it's pronounced GIF. That's what I just heard. Thank you, Mond. That was it, huh? I think that was it. Uh-oh. Aron, you're laughing so hard, you're breaking the internet.
All right, Eric, wrap it up.
I guess it's up to me to wrap up. Oh, Aron's back. Okay, cool. Okay,
you were chopping out too, so I don't know if it's happening on my end or yours or on the lines. I don't know what was going on with that, but there's been a bit of it tonight.
We survived. It's fine.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Eric. Do please drop me an email. Let's get up a chat, and I'll be happy to post your story on my channel.
All right, appreciate it. Yeah,
along with references. Show me whatever links you want me to share, and we'll do that.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. And are we done for the night?
Is there music plays?
There
it is. Yeah, there's music.
Need to hear music.
Cool. Yeah. Have a good night, folks.
Somebody says, Hannah Hudgens says, ugh, I meant Aron, dumb autocorrect. Corrected it, Aaron. Anytime someone brings the snakes, they say they like, I always reference you. LOL.
Super chat. Still coming in.